the gang called Gypsy. Gang and they come and get Gypsy. Gang and they come and get Gypsy. Gang. I met a Gypsy. Gang. I met a Gypsy.
The Maxxis tyre for me, overall, is one of the best tyres, if not the best tyre I've ever ridden on.
All right, we're on. All right, Mike Sleeter joins us via a FaceTime call, but the man himself, he's got the mic set up, he's got the whiteboard, he's making moves. I'm excited to have you on, bro.
Yeah, man, it's been a long time. I think a couple of years. I think since the last time we spoke as over for Christmas, and now we're a world apart, separated by a scamdemic.
Yeah, dude, and you have no president as well, which is got to be a little bit weird.
Yeah, it's very strange times over here. Yeah, no, it's crazy. I just try to keep my head down and worry about this weekend's Vet World Championship.
Oh, is that this weekend?
Yeah, man, it's practices today, and then like open practice. I rode there Tuesday a little bit. I rode the 2021 Honda for Swap on Tuesday. Did some media stuff for that, and then. So I brushed up a little bit on the track. I spent so many laps around that place, I'm not really concerned. And then racing Saturday and Sunday. So it's supposed to drizzle a little bit. It hasn't rained for like 6 months, but it's supposed to rain on race day, so it should be pretty fun.
Dude, that's on. I don't know if you've been following like all the dumbass shit that Sam and I have been doing. But
yes,
we've coined this new thing called semi-pro, and because essentially like we ain't pro, but fuck, we make a living off dirt bikes, you know. So I'm like, we're semi-pro up in this bitch. So we got a couple of ideas for things that we're gonna do, and man, when like you were there with Azza the first year that he did the Vet Worlds, and then the next year I was there with him, and he ended up winning, and dude, I was just like so inspired. I wasn't even riding at that point, but I was like so inspired to like go and have a crack at that. So I think me and Sammy are gonna do the Vet Worlds at some point, bro. Hopefully next year.
It's a whole lot of fun. I mean, it is funny to see the guys like Alessi taking it so serious. Like Tony's at the stopwatch. I mean, it's kind of inept in their. I was gonna say
it's on brand, bro.
Yeah, that's just they keep it consistent. They're out there Tuesday doing lap times and tuning ECUs for like a Vet Worlds race. But I won't lie. Like when I raced Coppins, I was in the best form and part of my life when I raced him. So it's just the season of life. Like when you get into your 30s, now I'll race a 30 and 40 pro. I'm 40 now, and
oh damn,
I'm old as shit. So going into that, like it's a different season. I'm not that concerned, as you can tell. I literally bought there's a 30 Pro 125 class on Saturday, and I bought a bike 2 days ago. I bought it yesterday. I'm building it tonight and tomorrow. I'm gonna race it Saturday.
That's the move.
Yeah. So I'll race the 450 as well. But no, it's just a rad, like it's a lot more culture, kind of like a day in the dirt, but racing, you know, like more, there's beers afterwards, maybe even between motos, depending on what your style is.
Dude, I've been pushing for the whole 30 plus thing to happen here in Australia, and we finally made it happen. We did a race about a month ago. It was actually fucking unbelievable too, to be honest. Like we had such a fun crew of dudes on the start line, and I think there was 16 of us. We only kind of made the class like a couple weeks before, but I'm hoping that is enough for some of the other, you know, clubs and that to actually get guys off the couch. Because I mean, I just don't, I've said it on here a bunch of times, I guess I don't need to go too deep into it, but it's like, I don't want to race with cunts that still think they can be fast. And it's like, even if you are fast at 30, if you're racing 30 plus, you know that like you still got a job on Monday. And it's like, I want to be able to go to work. I don't want to get cleaned up.
It's interesting you say that. When I raced the 30 Pro class for the first time, so that had been 10 years ago, unfortunately, Doug Dubach was like mid-40s, and he cleaned me out so bad. Like the first lap down Mount St. Helens, and I'm like, I came in super fired up. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, man? This is the vet class, not the schoolboy class. but these guys come to play, right? Like they know their body, they know their equipment, they're pretty dialed in their 30s. When you're early 30s, you either like kind of still having a lot of fun or you have new kids. So you're kind of got like a lot of things going on. But when you get into your late 30s, your life's kind of figured out. And maybe you have a little more selfish time to kind of go to ride days on weeknights and whatnot. But no, I think I just realized that yesterday, actually, from a friend of mine, that you guys didn't even have a 30 pro class. It was 35 pro. So that's a big gap between racing pro and then, 12 years later, essentially, if you race pro, or 15 years later to be able to race for fun at a higher level. That's a big gap.
Well, like my thinking is like, I'm 32, so I'm on the lower end of it, right? And I think 2008 was the last time I sat on a start gate, like behind a start gate for a motocross race. Like I've done day in the dirt and all that shit, but there's no start gate there. So 2008, bro. So that's like somebody that loves the sport. Like I love the fucking sport of motocross, but I don't do it because I just felt like there wasn't a home for me. Like I don't want to go race fucking Clubman Open. Like that's like the kill zone, bro. You know what I mean? That's
I get you, man. Like we're in the same season, right? Like 2-stroke world championships were a couple of weeks ago, or a month ago, and I'm 40, but I'm still fast enough to get some guys away, and I'm in the mix in the top 5, and I'm like, guys, just leave me alone. Like I just want to race, But like Josh Grant, JG's killing dudes in front of me and smashing pipes, and it's just a different. It's just like the history repeats itself all over again when you're old as crap with gray hair, But I'd like to hear that you and the boys got a 30 class going over there, because it's definitely it brings a good life. You usually in your 30s you have more of a foundation. You have some money to buy the bike you want, like when you're in your 20s, you're squirrely. You kind of lose that tangible support from your family. So it's cool. That's good.
Yeah, it was definitely a thing that I've really been trying to inspire, like the less serious side, and just like we're all in this to have a good time. But I just, if I sort of think by the time I'm 35, I'm probably going to have like a kid, and the barriers to race by the time you're 35 just seem like a lot more than 30. Like 30 to 35 seems like kind of the sweet spot where I'm still single, I've got a sick bike, and I've got a bit of time, and I can actually do it. And you're right, like in your 20s, you're like scraping together to try and fucking keep the dream alive. But it's like, I'm living the dream. Let me just enjoy it for a bit now. Give me 5 years to enjoy this shit.
But then when like you said, you have kids, when you have kids and they're old enough to sit on your bike on the starting line, and, having my wife by my side, and like we go racing with me as a family. My oldest son races now. He races 65s, and we go as a family, whether I'm racing or he's racing, and it's all for fun, because I'm not like necessarily working for the industry anymore, and I'm doing something different. So I buy my bikes, and I get to have a lot more. I can be who I am, who I am as a person, not have to wear like a company hat per se when I'm on the starting line. So it's cool to have your family and have your kids and your trophy wife with the umbrella around you. It's a lot more fun, I think, to be honest.
You've made it, bro. You've made it. You've completed the life cycle in moto.
Oh yeah, it's been crazy. It's been crazy, but I'm not done yet. I don't know. I love it, man. I love moto. It's what made me who I am, and it's given me my family. I'll never turn my back on the sport. That's for sure.
Yeah, man, I think we've been sort of honestly channeling some similar vibes over here. Like, I think that the podcast is what's really given me like new life in moto, like I just looked at it as to me, it was just a business, like I got to America in 2010, and it's like, that's 10 years ago, man. And it's just been this fucking grind until I left of just like, I just want to extract fucking blood out the stone, you know what I mean? But now it's like, I'm just kind of appreciating the stone itself.
Yeah. No, I could understand that. You were over here, like you and your crew worked so hard, so many, like you really never stopped working when you guys were here. It was when you woke up to went to sleep, you always had to be on. And and that's tough to sustain, right? I mean, you have friends that still do that. I do as well, and it's just a tough way to sustain it and not learn to love it.
Yeah, and I think that if you're not appreciating it while you're doing it too, like I didn't even fucking ride while I was in America, and I was around like all the best bikes, all the best guys, the best track, it wasn't even in my mind, and now I'm just like, fuck, I kind of blew that part of it.
Yeah, but at least you get your second chance, right? And in your home country as well.
Yeah, hey, and fucking, it's a lot easier to crash in Australia than it is to crash in America. I can tell you that.
Yeah. I can't. Oh man. Oh, I hope I don't find that out soon.
How are you, like, your body? Because I had a crash in July that I'm still like literally I'm just not back from, and you had that massive one. So what was it like coming back from that injury? I think it was when you first came on the podcast, you were still sort of dealing with it. How long did it take you to get back from that?
That was almost like right in Zach's Open, like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I got hurt in November, and my first race back was in Moto was June, Mammoth, and I remember racing, and it took me a long time. Like it was pretty soon it was a quick recovery for what happened. But I was pretty fragile, like as far as mentally, like I didn't really want to take risks, and it just slowly wears out. I mean, just the little bit of second guessing wears away, and like I just took my time, and my body, I still have a lot of nerve damage in my lungs from the surgery to reconstruct my lung. But as far as like mobility and strength, I probably could be stronger than I was then. I've taken a lot more time, like figuring out my body. I still race mountain bikes and cycling is very active. So I do have like a sense of when I breathe, and I have like a very gnarly, almost like a surfboard rash on my chest inside from when they reconstructed my lung. But as far as performance, I don't have any restrictions. I'm pretty lucky.
Yeah, that's the go. Like this has been my first like real injury in a long time, and it's just like, it just has not got better, like the just daily pain. Like it's just I mean, you could say like technically the injuries are healed in terms of, there's no more tears and all that shit. But it's just like, fuck, man, the hangover from this one is just like literally daily pain. Like every day wake up, exact same pain, exact same spot.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough to get over, especially when you're riding and loading up. And it's riding guards so many injuries. You get your knee braces, your boots, you got all these things. So like it's almost sometimes easier to ride than it is to like just to get out of bed, which is crazy to think, right?
Dude, that's what everyone's like, because I've got the like jiu-jitsu stuff. Like jiu-jitsu really fucking hurts. Like if I train, I'm sore. Like I get up the next day, I'm sore while I train, I'm sore like for days after. And then all the boys are like, "Oh, I can't believe you're still riding moto." I'm like, dude, moto doesn't hurt me unless I fucking crash or whatever then. But like to actually ride itself, like I feel better riding than I do kind of anything else,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a blessing and a curse, because sometimes you don't take the right time to get the mobility back, get the stretching, get all those things that are important, to sustaining it. Like moto's so one dimensional, like you're
very locked in.
Shoulders, you're locked in, right? And whatnot. But I think it's really important to do your stretching and a lot of guys train on bicycles like myself, and it's a hobby as well, right? I don't train per se for moto. I like to ride my bicycles. But it's a very similar position. Your head down, you're looking up, you're rolling your shoulders over, you're pedaling your legs, a very similar motion. So it's important to try to foam roll and do all those things. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you I do it as I should, but I know that's what I should be doing.
Yeah. I mean, that's been one of the big things for me, is just like constantly on that foam roller. But fuck, it's so hard to stay motivated, man, when you're like,
it is, man. Like I struggle with like those, like I want to hang with my kids and I want to do other things besides roll around on a piece of hard foam. But it is, I think the key is maintenance. It's like our bikes, right? Like if we just keep riding our bikes and then don't maintain them, they're going to pout, they're going to blow up. But I think our body's much the same. It's just having the foresight to just do it, just to put your ass on the ground and roll around in your glutes and your hammies and your IT band and just get it done.
Yeah. Which way should we take this? Because there's about 1 trillion things I want to talk to you about. Have you got anything burning that you want to talk about? I can just throw it to you to start, or because I got a bunch of shit I reckon we could talk about.
Yeah, man. I you know what? Honestly, like one thing that is pretty crazy, and you didn't even know this, is that I'm moving over to Oz. Right? That's heavy for me.
Yeah, you
That's
said
really
that the
heavy.
other day.
Yeah. I'm moving down to Oz in after the first of the year. The kids got enrolled in school this morning, actually.
Wow,
So,
bro. That shit's real now.
It's real. It's really exciting. Kind of torn. Like, I'm nervous, obviously, but just because, I'm a co-founder of the Pinnacle Nutrition Group, and we've been doing really well, and it's a small team of 4 of us, and we've been grinding, and we're getting to like climbing the mountain, and then like I'm like, yeah, this like you said when we opened up, like we don't have a president right now. The whole thing is my kids haven't been in school since March. They've been at home. No, like California's not going to school. It's not fair to them. My wife, it's like Groundhog Day every day. And having the opportunity, I applied for my residency about 2 years ago in Oz, and I have it. And we're gonna make a change, and we're out. And house goes up for sale next week, and it's real. And start a new life. And MX Stores distributing the P&G products, so I'll start, kind of hustling that and kind of continue what I'm doing here in Oz. And I'm nervous, but really excited at the same time. It's been we talked about it, we were going to do it, and then my residency took a lot longer than we anticipated, just with time, and now we can use it. So it's pretty cool. I'm excited.
Dude, I'm excited. Holy shit. Yeah, that's going to be sick.
So we'll be able to race the 30 Pro class together. So that'll be cool.
Dude, I feel like, man, we'll be able to do a lot of cool stuff together. I think that,
yeah,
like I'm not sure if people in Australia know. I mean, I guess if they listen to the first podcast, they know a lot of stuff that you've done. But man, I honestly feel like you'll be a real asset to the Australian industry. Like if you want to get into the industry and sort of, it's not like you got to go fucking balls deep and really get in there. But I just think that having you around is it's going to be a step forward for us. I think in a bunch of different ways, and you might be able to help me set up my bike.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm excited, honestly. Like I have no agenda, right? Like I want to go, and I have a YZ250, a YZ125, and a YZ450, and I'm putting them in a container, and I'm going to show up with bikes. I'm not going to really try to find a job, like per se, like or working with an OEM or a team or like doing anything. I'm going to let it kind of come to me, but I'm not opposed to anything, right? I'm moto. I love it. Like my kids' bikes coming over will be at club days, and I'm like really excited of that slower pace. Not that rat race, and go into, the races on the Sunshine Coast and go into Coolum and go into places that like I've been to, but not been to as a dad, right? And like getting ingrained, and then working with like some of the guys that I know, like Mike Ward, and just kind of getting more ingrained in it. It's going to be really fun, right? I'm really excited. Because I have no agenda, nothing's in other than just building P&G. Australia is my goal, right? But that goes along with moto and cycling and jiu-jitsu. It's a nutritional brand, right? It goes all in hand. It's going to be really exciting. So that's the biggest thing that I have going on right now, besides just my daily workload and balancing a family and life. So yeah, that's that. I don't know what it's going to take, but I'm coming. I'm going to come in and be locked up in a hotel at some point for 2 weeks, and then get out and start life.
So when do you guys move?
Sarah's going to move with the kids in the middle of January, and then start school February 1st. Like I said, they got enrolled and accepted, and then I'm going to come probably mid-February at the soonest, at the absolute soonest. But that's the plan. And then from there, that's where I'm doing. It's going to be crazy.
You'll be able to jump on some Supercross companions with us.
Oh, without a doubt. I would love it. I'm such a super fan with like the way the guys are racing, the guys are riding right now. It's unreal, right? Like what's happening in the industry and the moves people are making, it's going to be a pretty amazing season, I think.
Oh, have you got your phone there? Did you go on my story and watch this video that I like? It's on my it's just on my story. It's a Tim Geyser on the weekend. Oh, at Lommel, sorry. Have you seen this video?
Was he going through the sand? The sand of him going through. Pete Fox posted it too, right?
Yes.
Oh, amazing.
What
that
the
guy, like,
fuck is going on there, dude? He looks like he's floating. I had to watch it like 4 times. I was like, "What the fuck are you doing, dude?"
Yeah, it's crazy, like how smooth that looks. But I'll be honest, like going into the GP stuff, what's interesting watching the GP is how much those guys crash. I know how tricky those tracks are in Europe, and they're hard and they're more dynamic than US. They're kind of a little more dynamic, I think, than the typical Australian track. But at the same, they are sketchy. But the guys crash all the time. I figure, like, I mean, Geyser crashes every weekend gnarly, and he still wins the title, right? And it's like, if you can't do that in America, like, you have to be way more calculated. So I don't know what to take from it, but those guys just are not scared to just put themselves on the ground, every weekend. It's wild.
Well, let's start then with the America versus Euro debate, because I honestly fucking love the AMA motocross. I've been to all those tracks. I love those tracks. I absolutely love the riders. I know pretty much everybody on the start line. I got a lot of people to cheer for, but I just have found myself not really wanting to watch the AMA motocross. Like, there's some of it that I'm like really stoked for, but it doesn't pull me to like get up in the morning and watch it live like I used to. I'm sort of content to watch the highlights, and that's never ever been the case for me. But in Europe, I'm like really down to sit and watch those motos now. And one of my big takeaways for that this year was just the fact that, like, I could visibly see that the tracks in Europe, the tracks in America are fucking smooth, and it's sort of almost like a bit disappointing. Like, I kind of want to see dudes do shit I just could never even do. And I feel like the national tracks this year, it's just, I don't know, it just didn't have the same vibe to it.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's start off with, they had how many rounds at Loretta Lynn's, which is a 85 track, super mini track. I mean, I get COVID.
I get that, like, COVID aside, you know what I mean? Like, I get there's some stuff that kind of went down, and that was purely because of COVID. So, like, that aside, but just in terms of, just the tracks themselves, it just seemed like every race was just this super highway,
Yeah, it was definitely. I think Paula actually shaped up pretty good, I'll be honest. Like, Paula was quite dynamic because you had like the dirt and the sand, like the west side of the track. Then towards the top, you had actually rocks and some chuckles. Yeah. But they do cater to the rider, where I think the GP tracks cater to the promoter. They build the track for what they want. They don't really care, right? It's like, this is what the track is. This is what you're going to race. And they actually get a lot more time on the track. Maybe that's what it is. I think the GP riders do a lot more laps before the actual motos. So I think that could be a contributor in why the GP tracks are so much rougher. I think the depth within, like, there's a few standouts too in America, where, like, Europe, there's about 5 guys that were a little bit closer than, just say, 2, right? Yeah. So, and I don't know, it just, I'm impressed with the willingness to crash by the Europeans and their speed, but I'm not impressed with their racecraft. Their racecraft's garbage, in my opinion. They crash all the time. They're extremely injured. Like, to say Jeffrey Hurlings is one of the best ever is false, in my opinion. He's not. He doesn't finish. He hardly finishes series. He'll miss 3 rounds. If you miss 3 rounds in the States, you're not winning the title. In my opinion, right?
I mean, that's pretty. I'd say that's pretty fair to say.
He is fast, but he's not maybe the fastest, like, in the world in motocross, but he's not the best, right? He's not the best. I think, Ricky Carmichael's the best ever. He's the fastest and most consistent. But Hurlings and these guys, I mean, they're missing races after race because their tracks are more demanding. I'll give them that. They're rougher, they're nastier, they're tougher. So, I mean, but they're willing to go the speed that maybe our guys don't. And then take into consideration that, our guys are racing 16, 17, 18 rounds of Supercross before that, and then they have their deals done in Vegas before, and they maybe cruise through that. I'm not saying they do, but it just seems like that could be a reason why.
Yeah, the Hurlings thing's interesting, man, because I think that if you look at just pure speed on like the gnarliest tracks in motocross, I don't think there's a guy that beats Hurlings if it's just like a straight up sort of, if that's like the metric. But you're right, man. Like Tim Geiser's won as many world championships as Jeffrey Hurlings, and no one's throwing around Tim Geiser as the best ever in motocross, right? Like Hurlings,
I agree.
Hurlings could be a 10-time world champion if he didn't hit the deck in 6 of those world championships and put himself out.
Yeah, I mean, was it 2 years ago he raced with like a broken femur right away? I mean, he's a tough son of a bitch, but he doesn't. I mean, he throws caution to the wind, right? Where Caroli definitely takes his time. He's going to be one of the most decorated of all time because he doesn't get hurt every weekend, right? And then I think Prado is the guy that's coming through that. It's a shame he got COVID because he was coming through and he had a legitimate chance, and he was on a roll. So,
and he doesn't crash a lot.
No, exactly. He's beautiful to watch. I'm actually surprised he did that. The TLD KTM thing didn't come to fruition I think there was a battle between him coming over and the GPs wanting him, the global team wanting him from KTM. But I think he could ride Supercross quite well by how he rides.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like a lot like Marv when he rides. Like you see a lot of those vibes in him.
Yeah, he's so efficient on the bike and smooth, and he rides so well. I mean, he's who, if you want to model yourself how to ride, I mean, he's probably $140, $130 on a fire breathing dragon. Yeah, absolutely managing the power like it's a 250F. So that's kudos to that kid. And he speaks so well. He's a good looking kid. I think he's the future of the GPs for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a point where, like, the GPs have to be able to retain superstars. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of can't just have the US be like this golden sort of allure, and anybody that wants to be anybody wants to go to the US. And I think that's probably, if we look at what Hurlings has done for the sport in Europe, I think that's probably one of his biggest contributing factors, is the fact that he actually decided to stay, and that was never like a thing, because imagine like if Ferrandis stayed, Marvin stayed, like, and then you chuck those two dudes in there with Hurlings, Prado, like Ferrandis in the 450 class of the MXGPs, man, that's a fucking scary dude too.
I completely agree. I think Ferrandis, if he was able to do what he's doing here on a 450, he'd almost be untouchable because his consistency, his racecraft. But then you go and, like we talked about before, are those tracks, the room for air is like so small. They're harder base or sandier. It's not really, you don't get a red bud in Europe, right? Like you just don't get a red bud or some loamy soil. It's either hard packed with stones or sand that just never bottom, it's but I mean, you look at like, there's how many in the top 10, I'm looking at points now, top 10 riders in the MXGP class, right? But it's only 25 guys, right? Like, so there's the depth is in the overall classification small, but the
guys that can win is quite,
yes, is quite big. But like you said, Geyser eats it big crashes each weekend, right? And he still comes back to go 4-1, where I don't think anymore in the States you can have a big crash and get 4-1. I don't think you can. I don't think it's possible.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. And what do you think about the tracks then? Because I think that, like, for me, every single track in America is prepped the exact same. The same bumps form, the same ruts form, the same, everything. And again, I'm the biggest fan of these tracks. Like, when you are at Redbud, it's like, fuck off. This is bullshit. When you're at Bud's Creek, it's just bullshit. And it's just the appreciation and the wow factor of just how incredible these circuits are is so obvious to you. So it's like, I'm not saying anything bad about the facilities and the track. I think they are the best in the world. But I just think that they're getting prepped the exact same, and it's like each week it's like copy paste, copy paste, copy paste. We're at a different place, but nothing looks different anymore to me.
I would agree, except this year the Redbud 1 was super hard based. Like it was very hard based and choppy. They didn't do that typical big rip with the sawdust that you're familiar with. If you go back to look at where J Mart took out Hunter, right? Was it who took out who before the leaps? No, it was Shimoda. Masterpool took out Jet in that turn, right? He fell in front of them. The track didn't develop as deep, and the base of the track was extremely hard. Where like you have destinations, they ripped it deep, and it was so nasty and loamy. So that track was typically harder based than normal. And even the Millville track was a harder base.
Yeah, that
but
was
they
a bit
got
harder than usual.
It looked this, like, but to your point, it was narrow where Tickle went over the bars, that little triple up the hill. Holy crap,
dude,
right? Like
yeah.
not little, but that's stupid. You don't need to have that stuff there. I mean, when I say stupid, it wasn't a dangerous jump per se. It was just like it's not needed. You could have some rollers up there and not have a jump, right? So I think that what they do is, to your point, is like I think in GPs they have a track makes their own track, and then in America they had I think Shane Schaefer did Millville and Shane Schaefer did a couple other tracks. So you have a style, right? They hire a guy and they have a style, and that's what they do. They try to accommodate so many things in one, and I think you've seen it. It's like it's a stereotypical mulch and rip and water and deep soil in the start,
and then if it's hard, add some sand.
Exactly. I mean, Loretta Lynn's is almost half a sand track now.
Yeah.
Right. That's not like how it used to be. And I think the sand becomes of a less maintenance thing, right? It can just develop and it gets rough, but I think that's what they try to do. And I don't know, it's a very interesting dynamic from you, like seeing it and me seeing it and then talking about it. I do see that what you're saying. I think the tracks that we did miss this year was like the Unadillas, right? Like those natural tracks. Unadillas, Southwick's not the same Southwick it's ever been, but it's still more of a natural track. But it'd be nice to implement. Hangtown's usually nasty, right? Hangtown usually is pretty nasty, but that wasn't. I hate that place. That track.
As soon as you said that, I was like, yeah, that's your joint, right? You love that shit, especially on a 125.
Yeah. Like honestly, the track's cool. I just suck there. That's the bottom line. Like I think it just sucks. So
Hangtown's probably the best track on the circuit to watch, though. From a fan.
I agree. I agree with you. It's like it's a pretty big facility, but you can stand on either side of the hill and see everything.
Yeah.
Right. No, I missed Hangtown this year as far as like watching and spectating. And like I said, I'm not dogging the track. I suck there, but it's a tough track to win on. So hell, keep it rolling. You know, I mean, Glen Helen, it sucks that MX Sports and Glen Helen can't kind of come to an agreement because that is the staple of American motocross, in my opinion. But I mean, whatever. Paula's risen up and taken the reins, and they've done a good job for what they have. You know, I think it's only going to get better if they continue to do it, but it still can't be Glen Helen.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, like I feel like Glen Helen, Redbud, Unadilla, like there's some iconic shit that literally everybody that rides motocross on planet Earth knows about those tracks. Whether you're right now just in the YouTube age and watching like edits online, or you're my dad's age and you've got MXA mags in the fucking 70s and 80s. You know what I mean? Like that's how iconic they are. It's sort of, you kind of have to go there.
I agree, and having Washougal this year as well, like having the dark clay, the shadows. But they did, to your point, bring in a lot of sand. They brought a lot of sand in that one section where there's no sand in that area, right? So they do try to do some stuff that's like not characteristic to like the home soil.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, let's just look at all the tracks that you just mentioned. So you just mentioned Glen Helen, super unique. Washougal, super unique. Unadilla, super unique. So like they're the tracks that you just to the point with Hangtown as well is I think that Hangtown changes every year to year. Like you never get the same Hangtown. There's something about that dirt there that no matter how you prep it, you really don't know how it's going to form up. And I think that
I agree.
it's quite unique in that sense. And I think you could prep Hangtown the same way 10 years in a row and get 10 different tracks or 8 different tracks.
And a lot of that has to do with the weather up there, because it could be like 120 degrees Fahrenheit, or it could be raining, right? We've seen it both ways. So it's like, I think whatever the weather does early, if it's a dry spring, then you're going to get a very, different soil than if you had like a wetter spring up north in Northern California. So yeah, it's, I think, and as you're saying this, you're mentioning these tracks, and this is no dig at MX Sports, because if it wasn't for MX Sports, we wouldn't have had Outdoor Nationals. But they're monopolizing all the tracks. Like Ironman's pretty much their facility. Loretta Lynn's is their facility. And that's how they got away with using all these tracks that's how they got away with doing the outdoors. But when they have the same crew and the same staffing and the same, Mount Morris is their facility, right? They have all these facilities that they control, which once again, this is not a knock on them, but that's their deal, where Dirt Diggers is the sanctioning body for, or the track owners for Hangtown, they prep it one way, and the Huffmans run Washougal, they prep it one way, and the Unadilla crew preps it one way. So any MX Sports track is going to be prepped very similar to any other MX Sports track, right? And that, I think that's the bottom line, is MX Sports is monopolize outdoor motocross because they do a good job. And I think they just take the path of, when I say least resistance, not as being lazy. They just have a crew.
I was about to say the same thing. Yeah.
It's not a lazy path. It's just like, we know this works. Let's continue to do this. Let's not take a risk. Let's grow the sport. And I said, I'm not knocking MX Sports, but they have a recipe and a playbook, and they use that playbook to the best of their knowledge. They're very small, lean program for what they do.
Yeah. And I think that, it's sort of natural that everybody wants to go that way, in terms of the riders kind of want to know what they got to expect and what they got to train for. And then the team managers want to know what their setups are going to work for. Like, people don't, to your point of path of least resistance, like Roger DaCosta doesn't want to have to deal with like extreme setup changes at every single track. And the riders don't want to have to deal with different conditions and different tires. And I think that, to circle back to the GPs, like, man, those boys, I reckon, would be just chasing, like constantly chasing setups, constantly chasing, different, I guess, like feelings with the bike, and one's going to work great here but not great here. And I think that that's why you see so much, like, probably crashing, for one, to your point. I hadn't really noticed it, but as soon as you said it, I'm like, yeah, they fucking cartwheel a lot.
They do.
And then what else? They fucking,
like Yager Geertz, he crashes every weekend, massive, right? Like, something happens and he gets up and it's insane. Like, it's insane how much these guys are willing to put themselves on the ground, but like, they just keep going. I mean, like I said, it's insane. But your point on setup, like, I've ridden Lommel, and that is the most unique, demanding track I've ever ridden. That never stops developing.
You looked like Geyser though when you rode it, right? That video we're talking about.
Yeah. So when I was riding next to the track, I looked like Geyser, right? Like, it was.
I can't even look that smooth in the pits.
When I rode there, I rode there with Everts, actually, and when he was at KTM, and to try to see Everts' lines for about 2 seconds was like watching him. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
What was that experience like, riding Lommel with Stefan Everts?
Mind blowing. Like, I woke up in this little Belgium, like literally drove into Belgium, and then woke up into some beautiful little, suburb of, Belgium. Is clean. They're washing the streets with hoses, and it's super quaint. And we drive to the track, and it's like everyone's having a coffee, and then I'm like, well, let's go ride. Like, oh, we don't ride till like 12. And then I get out there and it's smooth as glass. I'm like, this isn't that bad. Like, there's not even a bump. How rough is it going to get? And literally they do a frame swap on the bike. We were testing frames at the time, and I get back out there and I did not know even where to go. The bumps were the size of the sand was the size of Volkswagen bugs, and Everts was like, oh, it's easy, man. Just follow me. And like, he just was laughing. He had been like laughing so hard his stomach hurt when we were riding. but he did help me a lot when I wasn't racing, you know. I mean, like, I wasn't racing Lommel there. I was testing, so like it was just cool to learn, and it was every lap was better, and that kept the testing fun, right? I got to learn and try to be better on the bike and set the bike up. And when we were testing there, just so people know, we were testing frame geometry, but we weren't testing suspension settings. We were doing engine durability, right? So like Lommel, like that's where KTM and Husky and now Gas and Husky does all their durability in the sand because it's so hard on the bike. Right, like it's so, like if you can get your engine to last at Lommel for 90 minutes, you know, just you're good, right? You're good.
With that, that's interesting. Yeah. Oh, sorry, keep going.
No, yeah, it's just Everts is a first class guy, and everything just seems. One thing about him is he just doesn't understand how it's not easy to you, right? Like, well, why can't you do that? It's just this easy, and it's like, okay, dude, like I'm not you. You're not. I'm not a multi-time world champion, but I'm willing to check it out and learn. You know, and that's where he was cool. Like if you showed effort and you showed willingness to listen to him, because he is one of the greatest of all times. I feel is you just listen and learn and try. He was really receptive to helping, and that's why he was so influential at KTM.
Did you pick up a lot, like technically, in terms of your riding through those sessions with him, or?
Not real. I'll be honest, not really, because I was so overwhelming. Like I was holding my breath, managing the track, and like taking it in, and also working on a bike that I knew I wasn't ever going to really ride or race those kind of tracks, right? I was there for work and just the experience was in itself enough, right? Like if there ever came to a track with big jumps, I'd always jump him first with him, right? When we were doing photo shoots for like magazine, for the brochures and whatnot, I'd always have to jump him first because I rode Supercross, and his best finish was better than mine in Supercross, but he said he sucks, right? Because he only did it a couple times. But yeah, it's interesting. One funny story about Everts is we were in Belgium at a track, and it was a really tight clay, hard packed track. And it was a club day, practice, open day, and we were testing, and he had a crash coming down a straightaway and broke his wrist and was out cold. And literally there was probably like 250, 300 riders there on a club day, packed. And you could hear a pin drop when Stefan was on the ground. Like the whole is like, it was like God had crashed, right? And
dude, I bet
he was in a bad way. His wrist was dislocated and broken, and you know, it was crazy. Like that he stopped riding pretty much a lot after that. Like he doesn't ride very much. It was a pretty big injury on his wrist, but to see him crash, and he's so smooth, and it was really mind-blowing to see a guy of that stature and that influential in the global market just laying on the ground, and the public just like shocked, like numb, right? It was crazy.
Yeah, that would have been a hectic experience.
It was crazy.
What when you're testing frames and stuff, what are they like bolting in a whole new frame, or is there other shit that they're doing that can just like change the geometry of the frame itself?
Great question. There's two things they do. There is a frame that actually looks like that has you can bolt races. It's a huge head tube, and they can adjust the distance from the gas cap to like the top tube length out, right? And they could have these big, huge spacers. And that was just for to get geometry. But then when we were testing like frame bend, different pieces and different materials and different widths, they would do a whole frame, and they got it down. They could do a whole frame change in 45 minutes if they started with the foot pegs in. Like all the frames had foot pegs, cotter keys in, and like little like the hoses in line. And they'd take everything out, and they'd have a bike from on the stand to framed and back running in 45 minutes.
Yeah, that's insane, dude.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Like that was a cool experience to see how that would all work out.
So with I wanted to talk to you about some testing stuff. So I just got a 350. Shout out to my boy Sleeter.
Best bike ever.
Yeah, I totally.
I don't ride one. I don't ride one right now, but it's arguably one of the best bikes ever. I agree. It's like hard to beat it.
So 2020, if you're listening to this podcast and you've got a 2020 KTM 350, what are the advice from the god of the 350, Mike Sleeter? What do you do to the stock bike? And then what do you do to take the stock bike that bit further?
I would say like the air fork is hated because of how Cowie messed their air fork up. I don't think the air fork's that bad personally, I think it's good. I would run like from like the average guy's weight, say like in pounds, like 150 to 170. I'd run like 10.6 bar because it heats up to 0.2 bar. So in pounds, let me check.
Because I've gone a whack to what most people think, but it was I rode with Wade Hunter the other day, and then he rode my bike, and he was saying that like I was having to like really force myself over the front of the bike, like in deep ruts and stuff like that, and I felt like I was like pulling myself over the front. And yeah,
so you would want to run 147 pounds. I'm sorry, let me see. I think you'd want to run 153 psi.
Yeah, see, that feels way too hard to me, dude. And it just feels like it doesn't set down. So I put the forks like three notches through the through
so
the clamps.
You're like invisible 3. So there's 2 lines, then you go like invisible 3.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And then probably run 10.4. Like, so you'd run, what are you running for pressure?
120.
120. Let me see. Let me do the math. So like 10.4 would be.
But see, we don't have Glen Helen. We don't have really big bumps and shit.
Well, that's so KTMs are extremely sensitive on balance, right? Like if you have the balance right and turning and whatnot. So my partner in P&G, Chad, we just did KYB internals on his KTM, and man, that is bitching. Enzo did that over here. We dropped KYB internals, and that's like the next step. But honestly, like you said, 10.4, 10.2 to 10.4, because if you're not riding Coolum or a sand track, you would want to run a softer so you can turn it and you get that front end traction. But I think stock gearing's good. An ECU map, like if you have a Vortex, you can really get a lot of power out of a Vortex ignition. And honestly, pipes and mufflers for the KTM stuff, you don't really need them. They look cool. I always ran them because they look cool and they sound cool, but they're so good standard. Like it's hard to beat them. There's not much to do. I wish there were some magic things I could tell you, but there's really not a lot you can do to those bikes. Like they're so good stock. They're so good. And like I said, I don't ride. Everyone knows I don't ride them anymore. So they're just that good. I mean, I'm working on the 2021 Honda 450 now, and that needs a lot. It needs a lot of work. That thing's way off.
Yeah, that was sort of. I want to get into that next, but yeah, yeah, I mean, I've absolutely loved the 350, and so I got a press bike off KTM this year.
Yep.
But I just think I'm gonna buy the fucking thing, to be honest. Like I wanna do another full sort of year on it, and I'm sort of just now getting it to the point where like I feel really really good on the thing. Actually, as well too, running an auto clutch.
Oh, you're running the like the Recluse yeah. Swap's a big guy with those. I can't do it, man.
You're good. You're actually good at dirt. You're good at dirt bikes,
but I get it. Like I think that's really neat. There's a product for everyone. I tried the Recluse way back in the day when the Four Strokes had a bunch of engine braking.
Oh,
right,
yeah.
and to get it to free up, and the clutch pulsated a lot in your fingers when you use it. But they've improved them so much, so I think it's really neat that like, you can use them. Swap uses them all the time. Don Maeda has a Recluse in all his bikes.
Yeah,
so they are.
When was the last time you used one?
I used one on his Husky 350. Actually, it was not bad. Like if he didn't tell me he didn't have one, I would have just thought maybe it was a setting or something, like, but it's just, I don't know, mentally, I don't feel I need it. And I don't, like I said, I'm not hating on them. I don't feel I need that auto clutch for off-road. If I'm in the bush or riding like rocks and stuff, for sure I'd use one. That's for sure.
Yeah. I just essentially want to take like one variable out of play. And, to me, like in terms of getting like getting super tired. And, we did this race at Rocky, and I just fucking wish I had the thing so bad, because you can just go death grip on the bars and still make the insides of the turns. And, because by the time I was getting a couple laps into this race, dude, like, shout out to Todd, because Todd did not let him prep the track, and it's a legit sand track, dude. This place, like, the lines off the track, like cutting the track, were rough as fuck. Like, that's how rough this track got. Like, we were riding outside the cones, and there was still knee-deep ruts down the straights. And to me, as like a clubman level dude, to just be able to take my hands off, like, I stalled a bunch of times every moto just because I was still trying to get to the insides, but I just couldn't. I thought I was pulling the clutch in, but I'm fucking obviously not, because the bike stops.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a cool product, and I know Recluse sells the crap out of them. I know that. It's a really unique. I mean, what a groundbreaking item, like, to come out with a product that, like, revolutionizes how you can ride your bike.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Like, McCoy's the guy that actually sold me on the thing, because he was saying he started using it because he's like, dude, 30 minutes, like, or 28 minutes into a moto at Coolum at a national, it's like a procession of dudes rolling to the outside of every line because they can't pull their clutch in to hit the insides, and then he's just literally every inside just passing dudes like tight as fuck.
Yeah, no, it's a interesting. I mean, it's really. I think it's really neat nowadays. Like, you don't have to do a lot to the bike, but you can really dial a bike into your needs, right? Like, and get a lot out of it for those circumstances, right? Like, even when it's hard pack, if you just get off the clutch and you roll it instead of stabbing it, and you won't break traction. So I think it's a pretty neat.
Well, that with traction control now, dude. Like, that shit works insane, bro. What the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy what these ECUs now have. I know KTM's working on, like, the Wi-Fi system, like Yamaha, and then Honda's got theirs. And I mean, it's unbelievable what things are doing. I know the new Cowie 250F's got a bunch of new goodies to it. I rode that, the new 21 Cowie 250F, and yeah, all the bikes are so damn good, but that yellow one, right? The yellow one's still, like, the price point bike.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know what? Like, just to deviate a little bit there, like, I actually don't think there's anything wrong with Suzuki just being like, you know what? Fuck it, guys. We're going to be budget. We're going to come in cheaper. If you can't afford a new dirt bike, we're going to sell this thing at $8,000. It's like they've been running that same fucking setup for, I don't know, you could probably tell me exactly how long they've been running that setup, but it's like they're not.
I agree with you.
And it's like, let's have a cheap bike that comes in that people can actually afford to go and buy a new bike for. I don't even know what a new bike retails for, but, like, let's say you can buy one brand new RMZ 450 for $8,000. Like, that's going to get a lot of people off, like an '08 Yamaha and, like, into a more, modern bike that's new and they can sort of start again. And I don't know, that there might be a market for that in moto.
No, I think you're right. Like, I have a lot of friends that I raced with when I was young that are getting back into it, and they're like, oh man, I saw this RMZ 450 for, $7,000 out the door. I mean, I just looked at it. Its retail value with no rebates is $9,000.
Yeah,
out the door.
That's too
US.
Much.
Yeah, but I think if you go to, like, a dealer right now, the rebates are really crazy good. Like, you could get a secondhand one for $5,500 because they just aren't moving. And it's a great bike. It's not the average guy can't ride that bike to its potential. We know that. That bike's a good motorcycle.
Yeah.
It's a great motorcycle. Not even good. It's a great motorcycle. It's just, I think I blame KTM for the acceleration of technology and everyone having to keep up, and the market bears the price of the bike, right? The OEMs don't bear the price of the bike. The market bears the price of units. And when you are monopolizing the market, like KTM, Gas, Husqvarna, that KTM group is, they're bearing the price with technology. If people didn't think that bike was worth $12,000, they wouldn't buy it. They'd buy the Cowie. Well, no, they're buying it, right? So then the Cowie has to invest in their bikes. Now they have hydraulic clutch that costs more. They have a spring plate high pressure spring plate clutch like the KTM. So they're reinventing and reinvesting into their R&D programs. Yamaha has a Bluetooth EFI or ECU system, and everyone's investing, so it's driving the price up. But at the same time, we look at e-bikes, and in that same note, bicycles are just as much, if not more, than motorcycles. So you really have to take that all into account of what's happening. And during the state of COVID, like there's no, as you know, in Australia, there's no motorcycles available. Everyone's purchased them. The 2-strokes are worth triple what they should be. It's a weird time for the market.
It's been crazy to watch how everything's played out this year, especially. But man, that's interesting. Like I hadn't really thought about KTM being, the reason why we've seen this big push of, because the bikes, like this has been my first new bike that I've, I'm trying to remember when I would have had a new bike, man. Like it probably would have been, like honestly, I can't even tell you. But they're just so incredibly good, man. And like, especially, to think that I can jump on that 350 and put it in traction control. And I mean, I know that thing saved me a couple times. Like, have you had that? Well, you've obviously had that feeling where like this, the split second before you crash, you're like, at this point, Sleeter knew he fucked up. And like, I'm like waiting to crash as a result of me fucking up. And then that traction control kicks in. And then it's like, I'm not on the ground. And I'm like, dude, I know for sure I should have just crashed.
Yeah. I think, the biggest thing with the KTM is that steel frame. It's not as comfortable as like a Yamaha or a Cowie within the chassis, but it as far as like if you land on slap down or hard landing, the aluminum absorbs energy better. But the safety of the chromoly, you can tell where your wheels are. You can understand, like that's why they perform so much better, like track to track in Europe, because you felt this back in the day, those crashes back in the day on like your aluminum frame bikes where you like, I don't know why I just crashed. Like it just high-sided me out of nowhere. And that's the energy coming through the chassis, and it winds up and it kind of explodes, where like the chromoly does not do that. It absorbs the energy, and it lets you know like, hey, like you're about to fuck up. You might want to roll off the throttle, or you might want to stand that bike up in the turn, where like a Yamaha, it's taking me a long time to get to where I can trust the bike and know exactly what it does compared to my KTMs. Even if the suspension was off, I knew what the bike was going to do. And knowing what your bike's going to do in a good or bad situation is 90% of the battle.
Well, it's interesting, man. Like we sort of were just talking about the Suzukis there a second ago, and Charlie Costanzo got given a 2020 Suzuki or 2019, the fucking same thing. And he did the suspension on that thing. We weigh about the same, and he gave it to me to ride for the day. And man, I honestly don't think I've ever rode a bike, maybe just the stock Yamaha 250 that I rode at Townley's, but apart from that bike, I've never been able to get on a motorcycle and accelerate through turns as early as I did on that Suzuki, purely because I just trusted the thing. Like I just really, I had a feeling in the middle of the turn, like, yeah, you're good. It's green light. Just fucking hit the gas. And normally I'm just second guessing basically the whole way through a turn because I'm just not that good. But it's like that bike, that setup that Charlie had in that particular motorcycle, it gave me a lot of confidence to actually accelerate through turns.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Barsha, and this steel frame to that point, is he searching for something, right? He's searching. He didn't get that on the JGR Suzuki. He didn't get on the Yamaha. Is he going to get what he's searching for with the gas, right? With that chromoly chassis? Time will tell, right? But each person needs something different, and I like now where I'm at on my Yamahas with the comfort and the feeling of my motor. On the 450 engine package is similar to the 350 with just a little bit more, right? So I like that really free revving, like pipey motor, but the 450 KTM is more of a lazy power production, and I like that like snappy 450 power. So I really prefer like that Yamaha feeling. It's exciting to me, and I like to ride it. Where the KTM 450 is little more slower revving. That's why I always chose the 350, like we stated earlier.
Yeah, that's interesting that if there's any 450 that is, I guess, famously hard to ride, and there's just not been a lot of success come that way. And it's like, you're the dude that actually knows how to test bikes and is, you really know what's going on, and you've chosen to ride a bike that's like not the worst bike, but in terms of the bike that just has done literally fuck all in racing. And you're like, yeah, that's my horse. That's my horse.
Yeah, and that's racing, right? That's a good statement. That's in racing, right? And then in shootouts, it's proven to win every shootout, right? Over here, it wins every 450 shootout, from Vital to Swap Moto to Racer X. It's winning the shootouts. What's happening, in my opinion, and that's why factory Yamaha's regime of Mike Guerra, Keith McCarty, Dino Dave, Perry, they're all gone. They're gone because they were fucking the bike up from production. Where Roger DeCoster works with the production team on the factory KTM, and they leave it very similar to production, right? And they only change what they need to change, and they leave everything else the same that works. Where the factory Yamaha team had like an internal battle with production, with like Steve Butler, Travis Preston, and all those guys, and they tried to make their Yamaha better than production, and they went ass backwards. Cooper Webb was told that he could never ride the stock Yamaha.
That's so retarded.
That's so retarded. You need to start with a bike that obviously great engineers, great test riders built. Let them ride it, let them try it, see what they want to change. But no, they just take it. They put billet clamps on it, 50 millimeter forks on it, 18 millimeter shaft shock, different chain blocks, different skid plates, different exhaust, different mapping, and they just don't even know where to go, left, right, forward. And these guys want to just go fast. They don't want to develop, where you have like production teams in all OEMs, they take small steps, like 1%, not even that, 0.1%, make it better, where Yamaha basically came to a ceiling and then, they've cleaned house. They've now Star Yamaha has them. I talked to Rick Gilmore, Ricky, and he works for KYB. I talked to him this morning, and he's out testing with Malcolm and Ferrandis, and those guys are so happy. It's incredible, right?
That's awesome.
And I think it's a quality control thing. I have some really trick KYB internals on my 450, but I have stock triple clamps. I have stock chain blocks. I don't run a skid plate. I have a very standard chassis with a Vortex ignition and stock engine package, and I can't ride the thing for what it's capable of, but I know it's handles so good. So I think when you start getting to these factory teams, Eli Tomac's bike did that for a while. They start changing things to change things. Internally on race teams, people have jobs that they need to justify their jobs.
Yeah.
So they're making big changes to justify like this fabricator's job. This guy makes custom skid plates. This guy makes billet triple clamps and parts. But if he's not making things, we don't need him. So we need to make things for the bike to keep him. And I think and JGR's, like, I'm gonna lump them in there, right? We're going back to like Husqvarna, the KTM group. That bike is essentially standard. Like, it's a standard offset triple clamp, bigger 52 millimeter forks. They don't chop the subframe. Like, it's a very stock, ergonomically built motorcycle. And look at that's probably the most sought after brand to ride for right now. I think we can both agree.
That would be the premium team in motocross and supercross for sure.
I agree. It's just, as a team, their resources, their data is unmatched, but they don't reinvent the wheel with what they're given from a factory, because the racing program's involved with production.
So when we did the podcast 2 years ago, we both spoke about the fact that, like, even to me, I'm like, it makes so much sense to give a guy a stock motorcycle and be like, there you go, you got a month on this thing. You get the stock bike with your suspension that will do for you. Obviously, like a Ken Roxon, he ain't gonna ride stock suspension. Like, it's not gonna be good for him when you've got other good shit. So, like, okay, fair enough with that. Give him factory tires.
I'm gonna pause you real quick. Guess what? He was at State Fair, which AKA Star West.
This was what I was about to say. I almost messaged you the other day when I saw that, but we spoke about it, and then fucking. Not because they heard us, obviously, but lo and behold, Ken Roxon's out there dragging his fucking bars while standing up in a rut.
On a stock motorcycle.
Sick as fuck, dude. And like that, it makes so much sense because it's like, you're right. Like you can't go backwards from a stock motorcycle. Like that is, you get it. Okay. This is level 0. Now let's go to level 0.5. Let's go to level 1, level 2, level 3. Like, why the fuck are we just unlocking all the cheat codes on this thing? And then you don't know whether you're any good or not.
Yep. So, like, interestingly enough, like, I talked to Kenny that day, and I'm like, yeah, man, I'm on stock suspension with some valving and some springs, and the bike's good, man. It's good. And they obviously remapped it, got rid of that horrendous bog it had in stock form. But he really was able to fine-tune the bike for him, which I think is really important to him building his confidence. Kenny likes a feeling. We know that, right? Kenny won on RCH. He was on a stock Suzuki.
That's
right.
crazy.
Like he rode stock. He went back. He was having a problem with his bike. They had Sergio, who's a gnarly engineer, building custom things, like once again justifying his job. And he went, just give me a stock fucking bike. And they're like, whatever. So they wouldn't give him one. So he just went and bought one, was at home in Florida, started going fast. And then basically it turned into 2 teams. It was Oscar, his mechanic, building his own bike with him. They had that, Tickle and Sergio and all those guys building a factory bike per se. But Kenny won the title pretty much on a stock RMZ.
And so what do you think it is that makes these guys go back to the stock bike? Is it just forgiveness? Like just pure forgiveness? Like you obviously need the suspension to hold up in the size of the bumps they hit, the size of the jumps they hit, and then the speed they hit them at. Like I get that. But is everything else, apart from, really getting the suspension suited to the speed that they go at, is everything else just fucking overkill?
I think so. I mean, it's like you said, like you go to a local track, the bumps don't develop like they do at Glen Helen is a local track, but like for us, but typically the bumps are a lot smaller and whatnot. So you have if you go to a 52 millimeter fork on a KTM, it's not going to be as comfortable on small bumps. But when you go to like a bigger bump, it's not going to flex as much. So I think these guys, like, they're forced to believe they need something that's shiny, right? Kashima coated this and bigger this, and I'm a fast guy, so I need this. But I think the stronger teams are looking at not overdeveloping the bike, right? Not getting things involved that doing things to it that don't need to be done.
Yeah, and I think that what you said about KTM, like basically running that stock motorcycle essentially, but they're investing in the product itself. Like I feel like there's a disconnect between, it's like the factory, let's use factory Yamaha for example. It's like they want to make this factory Yamaha, and it's like, fuck that shit. Make like the Yamaha as good as possible so that when you get a stock one, just bolt on a couple things that you need and fucking off you go. And then it just makes your brand stronger. There's more guys in the general public buying it, which then is going to feed more money into, that's going to justify the race teams getting more money. It's like that sort of seems like what KTM's done, like, their bike is so good. Their stock bike is so good. Everyone, even just the local dudes, want to be on them. They've got bulk cash now because everyone rides a fucking KTM or a Husky. And then they can, as a result of that, invest more into their race team and more into their R&D and put their bike more ahead of the rest of them. So it's like, it seems like the other teams, they try and keep everything so under wraps and under the hood and bikes under fucking blankets. It's just like, dude, you're just literally ostracizing your fucking customer base.
Yeah, and you know what? In Australia, CDR does that, the banking the best, right? CDR is a very calculated team. Craig Dack does a very great job outside looking in. I don't have any intel, obviously. I don't know him well, but he uses a stock Yamaha and only changes what needs to be changed, right? They have stock triple clamps. They don't have these billet pieces. You look at like the success of his riders on their bikes, and it's been a very stock foundation.
They're probably the only team to win consistently on that 450.
Yeah, it's honestly I agree, and it's the best looking. Like it's a great looking motorcycle every year.
It does look good. It does look good.
Craig Dack has a strong program, and I think it comes back to leadership, right? He's very confident in what he's delivering. Where you look at Ferris when he came over to ride the factory Yamaha here, he struggled,
dude.
Right? Because there was going back to that old regime that was in the States of changing things and doing things, and they thought he was crazy because how could an Aussie bike be better than this bike? This is a fact. And long story short, I mean, I knew, like I could see it, but and just watching like CDR's platform over there, it's a beautiful looking program. Like once again, I have no intel outside.
No, I think you're 100% right. Like what you're saying is correct.
Like it looks like they do a really good job of quality controlling and the leadership on that team. Once again, outside looking in, looks like they're very confident what they're giving their riders. They know, no, you're not changing this. You only can change this. We know this works. They have data. They don't make big swings. Where I think when Jeff Leask left KTM, that and everything kind of folded, there was no leadership down there. And what happens is they try to outdo like the GP team and the US team and reinvent the wheel to show them they're making a better product than them. Well, that's Craig Dack takes the stock Yamaha and goes, well, what do you want to change? Oh, I want better traction. All right, so let's work on traction. Where the other teams like, let's make carbon fiber pieces here. Like, let's do this. I mean, we'll look at like JDR, right? Look at dual injectors and this and that because they didn't want to conform to the KTM way. They thought they could do it better, in the engine room. So that then becomes a liability, right? So
yeah, it definitely creates like a disconnect.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, it definitely was interesting to see, these guys that are out there on stock motorcycles. And it's like, man, they're just so fucking good these days. Like, it's out of control how good all of these companies have made these stock motorcycles that you can just buy off the dealership floor.
Yeah, it's incredible, right? Isn't it cool too, though? Like, I raced a stock Yamaha for 7 months for fun. Like, I went to Mammoth and raced it because it was capable of racing stock. KTM's the same way. Cowie's the same way. It's really fun. It makes it attainable, right? Like you got Benny Blosses and kids like that on the 450 class that can be competitive on a stock production motorcycle.
Yeah. So let's talk about some 2020s because they haven't really hit Australia too much yet.
21.
21.
Yeah,
boy.
yeah. Let's do it. Yeah.
All right. First of all, Honda 2021. I fucking love.
Man, they let me down.
Oh, I know. But before we even get into that, I just love the position that Mike Sleeter is in his life where he can just talk fucking unfiltered shit on the most anticipated bike of 2021.
Yeah. Thanks.
How does it feel? How does it feel to be in that position in your career?
It feels pretty good, honestly. Like giving Lee Hogan shit last night. I would FaceTime Lee Hogan because he was posting pictures of his fine girl that he just got in his house. I'm like, well, you got a lot of work to that bitch. It's fucking, it's in what, like I was with the Honda guys on Tuesday. They just rushed it. They rushed it. They didn't figure it out. But as far as me being, all I have is my transparency, my word. And I think I'm a media source for, I have a blog that I update here and there of what I'm doing, but I'm not a media source and I have no skin in the game as advertising, right? So I don't have to protect my words. Swap Moto Live, I'm very fortunate. Don lets me be his voice.
It's a credit to Don for that too.
Yeah, he lets me he never corrects me. He never tells me to calm down, and he just lets me do it. And I'm not an asshole. I just speak what I feel, and what I feel is what I feel. It's not the gospel.
There's not an agenda behind it.
No, there's not. I mean, like I buy my motorcycles. I paid $4,700 yesterday from Yamaha for a used 125. Right? Like I like to be on my own terms and not be a conflict of interest. Like Chris Kiefer, he's good at what he does, but he's fake news as far as I'm concerned when it comes to testing. He double dips. He tests for Honda. He tests for Yamaha. Then he's a media source for testing. You can't do that. You have to be when I tested for KTM for 15 years, I couldn't use my opinion because I was biased. I obviously can't. You can't be biased when you're developing motorcycles. I questioned Lee. Lee's a good friend of mine, but Lee's a HRC representative, and he's giving feedback on motorcycles for, is it ADP? And it's like, how do you how do you have a non-biased opinion when you're getting support from manufacturer? That doesn't really, you can't do that, right? It's like you know, your show is sponsored by Nobby Underwear, right? Nobby, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is it, you're not going to say Ethica is better than that. That's a bit of you're going to cut the hand that feeds you, right?
Well, I mean, even that's sort of the reason why I wanted to buy this 350. Because KTM gave me this 350 and all I've done is talk about how fucking dope it is, and then it's like I just give it back in 6 months. I'm like, I've just said how fucking good this thing is. I'm gonna get it back and try and get a free bike off someone else. I was like, I'm gonna fucking buy this bitch. I at least need people to know I'm not full of shit.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing is it's all we have is our word and our transparency, and I think the world of Chris and I think the world of Lee, they're both amazing at their craft, but like there's not a lot of money in our sport to double dip, right? So I'm on to different things outside of moto that allows me to play in the moto space still. So when I can be transparent, I am, right? And going back to the Honda, I mean, is it fair to say that Honda can deliver the most sexy looking bikes you've ever seen? Like they deliver these beautiful motorcycles. Like it just seems when they reinvent the wheel, like the new bike, it takes them 18 months to 2 years to get it right.
Yeah, well, I mean, perfect example of that, bro. You could go right now. If you could buy a brand new 2007 CR250, it would still put a horn on a jellyfish.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, it's what, but going to like the state of the CR450R, the 2021, the mapping was extremely bad at bogs standard. The chassis is really off.
Keep going, dude. Sorry, I just gotta fix this headphones.
And it needs a little bit of work. Like Charlie would be able to, Costanza would be able to dial that chassis in relatively quick. You know, Enzo did the suspension for us over here, and man, it got dialed in. We got it close, and then Twisted Development did the ECU with the HRC user setting tool. And it wasn't a new ECU. It was like a $250 mapping fee that he dynoed the bike and got a map, and it's really good. I rode it at Glen Helen Thursday, and it's really close. It's a little firm, needs probably another couple weeks of testing, but I'm excited to see what the factory team does with Chase and Kenny on it, because the ergonomics are Honda, they are sleek, they're good, the riding triangle is amazing. It's just they delivered a poor product to production, right? Which I told Ryan Dudek, the media guy from Honda US, I said, in a weird way, people still like to work on their bikes. Because like we talked about the KTM 100%. A while ago. I was like, you're like, what should I do to it? And I'm like, nothing, right? Like there's nothing you can do to it. Where a Honda, I'm like, you do this, you do that, then you can make it your own, and it's even better. That's fun, right? Yeah. That's fun. Like it sucks to spend, another $2,000 on top of what you got, but most guys are going to get their suspension tuned anyways. Most guys are going to map it the way they want it anyways. So I'm not knocking Honda. It's just they're more of it's more of a make it your own badass bike than like a ready to race bike as it is, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think that, it's been like literally your job for the last X amount of years to try and make as best a bike for just standard, just off the showroom floor. But I mean, there is no standard rider, so it's like it's sort of you've got to do it, and you've got to try and develop these bikes for everybody, but it's never going to work. And I mean, for me, I'm excited by the fact, fucking around with engine mounts and where my triple clamps are positioned and just things like that, just to see what does feel good. And I mean, honestly, half the fun of riding these days is like kind of going out and fucking with some clickers and, chucking a new tire on and just seeing, what you can feel, as opposed to, just sort of leaving it and just floundering around on the track,
Yeah, well, check this out. This is what Swap Moto did for the Shootout. Like, they're all trying to make revenue, these media sources, right? They sold the tires for the tests.
Yeah,
so basically,
I saw that.
Maxxis Tire was a title sponsor for the 450 Shootout. So as if I was back in my old position at KTM, I would have freaked out because I never developed that bike for that tire, right? Well, they sold the space to keep revenue coming in, right? That's what you have to do. And I talked to all the OEMs, like what their opinion was, and they're 50-50 of whatever. They understand they need to make money as a media source, but they also are like, man, this is tough. Well, it was awesome, actually. Like, the Maxxis is a very underrated tire. I think Todd Waters uses them over there.
That's what we're sponsored by them as well.
It's a really good tire, underrated in my opinion. I use them. I'm not saying that because I use them, but I was excited to ride all the bikes with the same tire, right? And I do say I will give the R&D crew a little slack. That's a bit tough, but the 2021 Cowie 450 is a phenomenal bike. It's just the fork spring's too soft for me.
Yeah.
It was close. It could have, if it had a stiffer fork spring in production, it would have won. The motor, the ergos, and you can see why Cincerello is so fast on it. It's an amazing bike. The KTM and Husky are just they don't have the comfort that the Japanese bikes do, but they just have they're just so steady. They do everything at a B plus, right? Everything's a B plus. Everything's a B plus or A minus. They don't do one thing at a B minus or a C. Where the Cowies, it's got a quick motor, and it's got a good compliant shock. It's just the forks were soft, and for me that was a big thing. But for the slower rider, to your point, it didn't matter. They loved it.
What was it like?
They loved it.
What was it like getting to ride all the stock bikes on the same tires?
It was good. I actually liked it because I could understand. Like, it was a real challenge for the chassis to shine, right? Because, like, if mostly the R&D guys, the guys riding don't get to pick the tires. They're usually picked off as price, right? Whoever's getting the best price on tires from Bridgestone or Dunlop. But the Yamaha guys were actually Steve Tatorsky and Preston were really blown away how good the Maxxis tires were, and they bought some before the test because they knew they was going to have them on there to make sure that all their settings were good. And they were like, man, these things are good. Like, okay, we're in a good place. And the Cowie guys, obviously McGrath uses Maxxis, and he runs them, and Jeremy's Jeremy, and he's like, I choose to run these because I can. I could get free Dunlops or get paid by Dunlop if I wanted, but Maxxis is a fun brand to work with right now. They're excited, and man, it was cool. Like, I think it was a good move, not only for Swap Moto Live to have a revenue coming in and Maxxis to invest in motorsport, but in two-wheel motorsport, but also to give a fair shake of like what the bike can do tire to tire.
Yeah. No, that is super cool. We've been running those as well. We've got to deal with them, and man, I
do you
can't
run
believe
the ST or the IT?
I got the IT on my bike now, just because we did like we did just a bunch of riding on this trip, and and I just didn't want to blow through like a good tire. But that ST's fucking good. I was really impressed by the IT though, actually. Like, I thought it'd be quite a big step back, but it really wasn't. It
really isn't. It just has a better wear pattern, right? It wears a little slower than the ST, but to my point, if you don't mind getting sidetracked on tires for a second,
mate,
over here and even in
do.
the Dunlop, I think globally has such a stranglehold on tires, right? They have such good market share that everyone thinks that they're the best, right? Where you could take a Dunlop out to, like, the hardest track out to Pimpama, or the hardest track, or QMP where it's hard pack, right? And a Dunlop won't chunk really. It'll wear slowly. But if you take an ST, and that's a soft terrain Dunlop, if you take a soft terrain Maxxis and ST, it's going to blow apart in 40 minutes because it's a soft terrain tire, as it should. A soft terrain tire should not last on a hard pack track more than an hour.
Yeah.
It should be complete garbage. But Dunlop, it lasts. And so a parent is convinced that a soft terrain tire should last like a hard terrain tire. Well, there's no, like, it's like Formula One or V8 Supercar. For qualifying, they put a soft tire on, and they go fast for a short period of time.
Dude, Jack, so it's like, you talk to Jack after, like, Jack Miller after qualifying, like, you'll hit him up and be like, oh, how's quality? He's like, oh, dude, I fucking, it was good, but I did my fast time on lap 3 of that tire, and, like, the tire was fucked. Lap 3.
Yeah.
Lap 3.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't that crazy? So, like, Dunlop will give a soft terrain tire to the market, and they have such a market share hold that everyone believes that tire should, soft terrain tire should last.
Yeah.
X amount of, right? So it's like Maxxis has a pretty big educational curve to get to the public that they have a ST, an intermediate, and a hard that are meant for the terrain. But Dunlop goes, you should use the MX-33. You should use the MX-3S. Like, use the soft terrain everywhere you go.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't. You should use a soft terrain at Coolum or a sand track, and you should use a hard terrain or intermediate terrain at a harder pack track, depending on the wear you want, right? So, I mean, that's just my theory on it, and I'm really stoked. Maxxis as a brand is badass. Like, they, you know, from mountain bike to moto, and it's a really cool brand to be a part of.
Yeah, man, I totally agree. And I had people hit me up in my DMs, like we've been working with them since I think like June or July that I've been running those tires.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and they've been awesome, like here in Australia. But I've had people DM me and being like, "Oh, the soft tire wears pretty quick." I'm like, it's pretty much like a factory soft. Like the reason
That's
why
exactly right.
The reason why there's like Dunlops, there's like a factory Dunlop. It's because they're softer compound than the soft that they sell. Whereas
you nailed it. Like,
whereas Maxxis, they're giving you like the soft compound. They're giving you like the tire that you would sort of want to have, or like what you would call like a factory tire.
Absolutely. No, it's just because, like, kudos to Dunlop for having such a strong marketing campaign and market, and such big. They have such huge market share that they've convinced everyone that's the tire to have. It's not a bad tire. We're not saying that, but Maxxis is underrated. I think it can. I think the rear tire. I'll say the rear tire outperforms the Dunlop. The front tire has a different character than a Dunlop. So depending on how you ride on your bike, it's gonna work differently.
Yeah. No, it's cool to talk about, man. Like, obviously, for me to say it, like, A, I'm not that good of a rider, and B, they pay me every month. So it's like, it's that conflict of interest thing.
I didn't know. I didn't know you used them, to be honest. Right.
Yeah.
And that's cool. Like, I went to Maxxis because Jeremy asked if I'd help test McGrath. And then I once again could have got free Dunlops as long as I wanted to race probably and ride. But I was like, man, these guys are fired up. They want to support the sport, and let's just start moving forward with, like, let's try something new. And I'm so into mountain biking and cycling, and Maxxis is the best in mountain biking. So I kind of just went all two wheels with Maxxis.
Yeah, that's where, like, because before I raced moto, like, I raced downhill, and it was always that minion, boy.
Yep.
If you didn't have that minion on your bike, you ain't shit.
The Minion SS, you're off the back, right?
Yeah. So we'll go back to these 2021. So the Honda, obviously, that's a package that you can make incredible. But so you're just talking about. I think that's maybe something that people get, like, it can get misconstrued as well, as you're saying it's like a bad bike, but it's like, no, we're testing the bike as it is delivered. Like, if you get it on the showroom floor and then you drive straight to Glen Helen and you put it on the track with just doing your sag and tire pressures, that's what you guys are testing.
Absolutely, and I can't wait to do that in Australia. I'm going to do it. I mean, I think we should do it ourselves, right? Like, I want to do it with a consumer, and that's how we do it. Is we take. Swap Moto Live gets all the OEMs come out, and they're all prepped like stock form. It's not a potential test. It's on the day, like you said. So the Cowie was absolutely unbelievable. And it went from I'll go through the rankings as I did them. First place to me was the Yamaha. Well, let's go back to front. So I think the Honda was last for me, right? The Honda was last. Suzuki didn't show up. So that sucks, but it kind of made it nice because we didn't have to ride it, because we knew what it was going to do and what it wasn't going to do. No surprise. So they didn't show up, but the Honda got last for me, unfortunately, just because it bogged. The suspension was really pitchy and harsh, and it was a mess. Honestly, it was like the hot chick that didn't know how to dress herself for the date, right? Like, it was really it was a wreck. Like, and then with the KTM, the KTM was next, and it had a little bit of like a harmonic balance, like it vibrated a little bit for me, and the suspension was really good balance, but just the motor up top was a little vibrating, and like it just slow revving. And then third for me, no, I'm sorry, the Cowie was fourth. The Cowie was next, so Honda Cowie, and the Cowie was perfect, but the fork was so soft for me when I brake that I get it tuck, and that tuck was really scary. Yeah. It was scary. It was like not a very fun feeling, but everything else was honestly like a 9.5 or 10. But that fork was like a 6 for me. And it went from like almost winning the shootout for me to 4th. And then the KTM was really solid. Did nothing wrong, but the motor was a little like vibrated up top because it has a little more air than the Husky. The Husky got 2nd for me. Lower bars. They have a lower suspension package on the Huskies. It's a
so
couple
they've got like
lower.
a lower link, right? So the rear end
No,
sits
lower shock. They actually cut the shock down, like put a shim in the shock.
Yeah, right.
And and they had pro taper bars. So in the ergos, it just felt right to me. Like, and that was my first time ever choosing a Husky over at KTM, and it felt good. I could push the KTM and Husky as fast as I wanted to go. Like, the bikes let me know quickly that, well, if Cooper or, Todd Waters or someone else is on this bike, they're going to go a lot faster than me, right? Like, where the Cowie was like, this is as fast as I can go because of the fork, right? So that's why that Cowie and the Honda were so far down, not because they're bad, but because of the idiosyncrasies. It just highlighted negative. Where the KTM and Husky, they didn't do anything bad. It just, the feeling wasn't as good as the Yamaha. It has like such good, comfortable suspension, and the motor's so responsive. The mapping's so good. Everything is just at a B plus A minus. It just was so good. But to that point it's kind of its potential, like you talked about earlier. Like, they do such a good job in production form that there's not a lot of room for growth, right? Where the Cowie, you add a fork spring or two if you're faster or heavier, and boom, now you're maybe better than the Yamaha, right? The Honda, we've done ECU and suspension, and now really small things, and now they start all leveling out, right? They start leveling out really quickly.
So sorry, keep going, bro.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the lay of the land, it's not a potential test. It's on the day. And Cowie's like, well, we can throw a fork spring in. And well, then now it's not a stock bike.
Yeah.
Right? Like, now it doesn't work. Yamaha is even kind of getting funny. Like, hey, you want to try this different map? You want to try this different seat? I'm like, is it coming on the bike? No, but it'd be cool to try, right? I'm like, on another day. I don't want to test for you. Right? Yeah. Like, I don't want to give you information. Like, you need to give me what Billy Bob can buy, not what the guy can't get. So it's a fun process. It's a really fun process. It's a long day and kind of a long month riding the bikes a little bit before to get familiar, but it's well worth it to be first to market riding all those things.
And so if you want to talk about the potential, what would you say is your shootout winner in terms of potential? Like, if we re-rank them in terms of...
That's a great question. That's a great question. Holy cow. I would say what's available to the public, and okay, there's two things. Do I get a parts credit? I think the Cowie is the best bike with potential as long as I get a parts credit.
And so what would you do, and what would you have to do?
I would do just a fork spring and some valing on the fork and shock. The motor is amazing, and I just have a weird thing that the Kawasaki wears out too fast. I've only ridden one for about 6 months, so that's my hang up, and I can't speak from like personal experience. I only rode one for 6 months, 2 years ago.
Yeah,
but that's my hang up: chain guides, chain sliders,
dude. Right.
So that's what so you take in the performance on the day with potential, the Cowie wins. Then you take the performance and potential of longevity, the KTM Husqvarna win.
Yeah, right.
I think that's the bike that wins, because the Yamaha, I love it. I do love it, but the ergonomics are crappy compared to the KTM. The ergonomics on the KTM are amazing. Like, the Yamaha is the worst ergonomics in the class, but the motor's so good, the chassis is so good, the suspension's so good that it overshadows those pieces.
Yeah, okay. But see, I haven't spent too much time. Actually, I'll speak on your Cowie point for starters. When I had a Cowie for a year and I fucking hated it, but it was back in, I think it was like 2009 or something, and couldn't get the thing jetted right. It was just I just couldn't stand the thing. And then my brother got the 450, and my dad we've always had Hondas our whole life. And Dad, every time I'd walk in that shed, Dad was fucking livid, because he's like, another fucking chain guide, like everything just went to shit on the thing, and he's just like, how did they sell this shit?
I know. And is it different in 2021? I don't know, right? Like,
I mean, I don't know
I
either.
don't. But history has shown that it's not good, right? So the Honda 450, I still think I can't give it the nod on. We don't have enough time and development on that's an all new bike. I think 2022 into about 6 months from now, seeing what the guys do globally with developing it and finding its idiosyncrasies. I think it'll be a good bike, but right now the Cowie would be the leader, just straight performance with just if you could potentially go ride with and having a parts budget. I think the Cowie is one of the better platforms.
That's super cool to hear that. Yeah, and man, you're so right though. Like that Honda looks so good.
Oh, it's a blood red, brand new blood red plastics. I mean, I don't think it's a better looking bike, right? Like they are so badass. The fit and finish of a Honda is unmatched, I think. And they talk about quality control. Those things last forever. The bolt, they change. They're the standard of what all bikes chase now with the bigger bolts and the better quality, right? So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what comes of development on that Honda for the factory team.
Dude, before I got my 350, I've been riding a 2015 CRF 450 that has 98 hours on it.
Like a death trap?
Dude, no, it's fucking pimp. Like they're not that good to ride. Like the front end, you have like basically zero front end feel on that bike. Even my mate Cam, he's a mountain biker and he rips on a mountain. I'm gonna link you two up big time when you get over here. But like he rides good on a moto, and he come in after riding and he's like, "Hey, what do you reckon's wrong with the front of this bike?" And I'm like, "It's a 2015 Honda. That's what's wrong with it."
Yeah. It's wild.
But dude, 97 hours, man, and like it's still like it's got a Kickstarter, but she still starts first go every time. And like I could literally drive to my dad's house right now, pick that bike up, put 2 hours on it, and go put it back in the shed. And there's just nothing is going to go wrong with that bike.
That's Honda. It's tried and true, right? Like the Yamaha is supposed to be. I mean, I've had pretty good luck with mine, but I grenaded one a year ago at Vet Worlds out of nowhere. The skirt broke on the piston. So, yeah, I think it's. I keep all my bikes stock as far as motor now, and they last forever. And it's just basically like a Skittle, right? Pick your favorite color Skittle, and you're gonna be good.
So I haven't spent too much time on the Yamaha 450. But the 250F, I think that's my favorite 250F I think I've ever ridden, as along with that Charlie Costanzo RMZ 250.
Yep.
But I wouldn't want to own one of those, because I got to kick it. Like there's just a bunch of, it's like, well, it's fucking 2020, bro. It's 2020. We ain't kicking bikes in 2020. But the ergos on that bike, it does feel weird, but I feel really good riding that bike. Is it different to the 450? Because I haven't spent that much time on it.
It's similar. It's actually really similar. On the 250, the 2021 is even better. The 250 Yamaha. It's
really?
I rode that 2 weeks ago. They went to the 450 chassis on that, and
really?
They updated. Yeah, that's the 250F for 2020. 250F Yamaha is all new for 2021.
Yeah, they look sick.
And it's really good, but on chassis, the chassis is I'd say it's almost a 10 for a Yamaha. It's amazing, but They did take away a little bit. They took a little bit of bottom end out of. They took that power, that gnarly bottom end power, and they shifted it towards the middle to the top a little more, so it doesn't have that like grunt. It's kind of it's more of a quicker revving Yamaha 250 with a less grunt. So it'll be interesting to see how it stacks up against the new Cowie. The 2021 Cowie 250F is same thing, is similar to the 450 with hydraulic clutch, electric start. They improved top end and mid range. That bike's phenomenal this year. I loved that thing when I rode it about a month ago. It's really, really, really good.
Have you had a chance to back the 250Fs yet, or is that still waiting to happen?
That'll be next Tuesday, actually.
Yeah.
That'll be next Tuesday at Kahia. We'll do all the 250Fs. I rode the 2021 Honda. yesterday, and it's exactly the same as
I was
this
going to
morning.
say, do we need to talk about that?
No, no, not. There's nothing to talk about. They didn't even change the graphics. So
they had a bid on that. They were trying to rush that 450.
Yeah. No, so I think the bikes for the overall shootout win, the Yamaha is going to be the one to get, and I think the Cowie is going to be the closest one to trying to take the win this year. It's a better 250F than 450. The suspension's balanced phenomenal. The motor's improved. So if you can get it's going to be close. I think the new Cowie is going to be one that's going to shock everyone in the shootout. It could win a shootout or two.
That 2021 Yamaha, they took a little bit of that bottom away. Do you reckon that's a pretty easy fix? Like if we talk about the potential, like you can get that back, or is it a big change?
I don't think it's not a negative change. It's like different, right? They made it. It's more fun to ride because it's like quicker and it shifted the power. I don't think the consumer is going to be bummed on it because it's more fun to ride, right? Like it's not as short of it doesn't rev like roar and like sign off. It's like re-up. Like it has like a funner. For me, it's better, but it's maybe you might lose a little bit of that guy that wants to be in third gear and roll it on like a 350. It doesn't run like that anymore. It doesn't run like that. But for like a pro guy, like the race teams are going to have no issue. Like it's going to be only positive because the chassis are so good. It's incredible. The chassis is so much better going from like tacky to hard pack. It's incredible. Like Yamaha crushed it on this thing. And it was interesting. I didn't know they were even changing it. It looks exactly the same, but it's all new. New front axle, new frame, new cylinder head, new crank. Like it's an all new 250F for 2021.
Yeah, that to me, I've never ridden a stock 250F as good as that Yamaha. And like when I went to Townley's, we did Townley's, it was like we were fucking blind after the Supercross. Like me and Sam, we got in 45. We got into our hotel 45 minutes before Townley picked us up, and we packed up. We packed up the hotel room. And then got some sleep. I slept with my phone in my hand, like on my face, so that when BT called, I'd wake up. And then we drove like 3 hours to his house, and then we went straight to this sand track. And that was the first time I ever rode that bike, and my hangover was gone. I was like, holy fuck, I actually feel good.
Yeah, you're all smooth, not trying too hard, just thin blood.
Just the arm pump and the shake like leveled itself out.
Yeah. Oh no, they've you can see why Star is just dominating, right? Like they're such a cowboy team. They just want to win. They're hiring every Tom, Dick, and Larry and building phenomenal race bikes, and that bike's a great platform to win. And in any privateer that basically loses the Yamaha 250F is basically what the KTM 450 is to a privateer, right? If you know you want to be competitive, you're getting a Yamaha 250F, right? If you're in the lights class, if you want to be competitive on 450, you go buy a KTM or Husqvarna because you just know it's going to last good. It's a great power plant, and you're going to be competitive out of the gate. So, yeah, kudos to Yamaha. Like that thing's. I'm pumped for Cowie. Once again, though, like, is it going to last? Like, I'm not saying it's not, but like, it's the reputation.
It precedes,
from Pat. Yeah, it's a bit of an issue with the reputation, but I'm not going to go on record saying it won't last because I don't know. I have not ridden it, right? So like for a period of time, but it's going to be a cool shootout. I'm excited for next Tuesday.
How far have 250Fs come? Because it feels like that bike, like that platform, I guess you'd call it, has just come such a fucking long way.
You know how I know it has come a long way? I rode the 2021 CRF 250, and that thing is as slow as molasses, man. It is. It's a great motorcycle. It's like a great foundation. It's like the perfect 250F for a kid to come off like a super mini and getting on like it's that slow, right? Where if you get on a 250F, I could not believe how slow it was, but it handles good. It feels good. It's just that slow. Like a KTM 125 is faster than a Honda 250F for sure. It's so bad, but like that's why you don't see privateers racing them, right? Like, because you can't.
And if you do, that's a bummer.
And the chassis is so good, right? Like the chassis is amazing and the quality is good, but like you got to have like a Penrite bike or a Geico bike to be competitive, and that's 12,000 in the engine, right? That's not attainable. That's not attainable to the average guy. So if you see a privateer with a killing it bike, he's just flipping off everyone and saying, "My dad's got more money than your dad, and I want to ride a Honda." You know, that's just what it's the bottom line. So
the point that you brought up before about like if you want to be a privateer in the 450 class, you got to be on a KTM, and if you want to be a privateer in the 250 class, you got to be on a Yamaha. It's crazy. Do you follow that Jeff Walker? You know who Jeff Walker is? Yeah, so that dude's a fucking legitimate G in the moto game, and he's like insanely underrated. But he did this video. Did you watch it on YouTube where he compared lap times on his 450 2020 Honda to his 2020 KTM? And he's a privateer, and he's like, I have to get off this Honda. And then he got on, don't quote me, people can go look up the YouTube video. I'm pretty sure it was 3 seconds a lap faster.
Oh my God, that's crazy. But I believe it. I completely believe it. I mean, I'm looking at this guy's platform now, and it's legit. He does a good job. Like,
dude, he's honestly killing it, man.
Yeah, he's got a great platform. Like, yeah, it's good. It's really good.
But yeah, I mean, to your point, like he's a privateer, and it's like he's going and he's doing these nationals, and he wants to do good when he's at the nationals, and he basically had to switch platforms. Because there's stock with what you can achieve as a privateer, like what you have the ability to change. He's gone, I just need to be on this thing.
Yeah, you can. And going back to what we first started on this call is track that KTM platform never like doesn't go 2% different, right? It's like always the same. Where I think the Yamaha might be 7% different, right? Maybe 10%. Okay, so you take that into consideration. Like my bike feels good everywhere. Like that's one thing I joked. I was on a road trip with my partner and sitting over next to me, and he's like, I went to East Street up in NorCal. I'd never been there.
I saw that. It looks sick.
Yeah, it was fun. And I came in, oh man, I love my bike. My bike's sick. And then we went to a track in South Lake Tahoe, and it's a little sand pit that Sean Palmer had. Him and some friends, and I rode it there. I'm like, oh, I love my bike. Like, it's just when you can go from a sand track to like a slick track to a hard pack track, and your bike's always good, you know you have a great foundation. But if you're tweaking it from track to track to track, you're not stoked. Right? Like that's when you're not comfy.
So one of the things that I wanted to ask you, and thanks for the rundown too. That's pretty cool for people that
thanks, man,
that are looking to buy 2021 model. I literally do not think you could find a more honest review of stock bike. And that's why I fucking love you, dog.
yeah, thanks. No, that's like I said, I'm excited to get to Oz, and I'm gonna come with no agenda because I really want to keep that transparency, right? Like I always want to earn enough cash on my own where I can buy what I want and ride when I want, and if the opportunity comes up to work with an OEM or a dealership or something that it can benefit all parties, that's one thing, but I'd hate to lose the credibility of not having, to be a conflict of interest. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we could definitely, we can do some stuff because, I mean, there's not that many people doing that shit down here, and I reckon, we'll definitely be able to get some cool stuff popping.
It'd be fun.
So with testing, right? Like I said, it's something that I'm trying to, like, I just enjoy going and fucking about, essentially. But like, so let's just say for the average dude that's got no idea like what he should do with suspension and like how to even tell if like how your chassis is feeling, and like where do you start being the average dude that wants to like learn your motorcycle? Like what are the things you should look for? What are the things that, like, how do you even start to gain the knowledge base that you have with like the feeling on a motorcycle? Is it something that people can do or like can build on it, or like it's just something you've got to, it's almost a talent in itself? Or like what would you say to the guy that wants to really get into his motorcycle?
You said it in that statement. It's learn your motorcycle. How do you get to learn your bike, right? And how you get to learn your bike is by riding it in stock trim or how it came if you bought it secondhand, and understand what it does bad, right? Don't try to reinvent the wheel right out of the gate, just like we talk about the factory guys. So I took my Yamaha 450, and I heard those things. Oh, they're not good, and they're hard to race. All those misconceptions, and I was like, man, I kind of like it. And I've obviously rode them before because I referenced them from KTM. KTM owned one just to see if we could, if there's something there. So I put a lot of hours on it in stock trim. Put my bars on it, put my grips on it, put my tires on it. Didn't even change suspension yet. Set sag, and then I was like, oh, I don't like it doing this, right? So I told Enzo, I want to change this. So that's all I changed. I wanted to fix high-speed control. So my recommendation to anyone is spend time on your bikes and understand what they do bad and try to fix the bad. If that suspension guy or chassis guy fixes the bad but gets rid of something that you liked, then you can tell them, hey, that fixed the wallow or that fixed the kick going in that turn, but now I can't turn it. Well, then you can maybe you can compensate, right? Well, you can figure that out. So my recommendation is for someone to learn, spend time on your bike in a safe setting and spend time on it. Like ride it at for 20-minute motos at a slower pace and understand what it does instead of going out fresh off the couch and having a couple of Red Bulls on the way to the track and just gassing it and not really thinking about it. Go out and warm up and understand what it's going to do and take your time and have some fun and then go, oh, it bottoms out here. I don't like that. Okay. Well, then maybe you understand, okay, it bottoms out in that hole, but it works everywhere else good. You know what you should do? Not hit that hole anymore. Right. But if you're chasing settings and chasing things, then you'll always oh, I want it to not bottom there, but I want to have traction on that hard pack turn. That's going to be almost impossible. Right. So you got to really it's a give and take. So I think spending time on your bike and anyone that buys, my recommendation to anyone listening to this, buys a 21, ride it in stock trim as long as you can to learn what it does good. So you don't lose the good parts and then fix the bad, right? Don't just go, oh, it does this bad. Well, what's it do good? I don't know. Well, it does this good. It does this good. It has good balance. Well, don't get rid of the balance. If it has good comfort, don't get rid of the comfort. That's my recommendation, is to really just understand the base setting of the bike and what it does good, and then get and recognize what it does bad, and don't put yourself in those positions, because the KTM works amazing in stand. It doesn't wallow. It doesn't kick real bad. It doesn't have a spike or a hook in the shock, where the Honda has a big hook. So you typically got to shorten the shock and make a different linkage or different curve. So each bike has its own character, and understanding the character of the it's like a chick, right? Understanding the character of the chick, right? If one chick doesn't mind you going out, staying out all night, not calling, then that's good. But you understood that she doesn't care. But another chick, well, you have to check in every 20 minutes. Well, if you don't do that, it's going to get upset. So you better start checking in. So it's pick your battles between bikes.
That's
my recommendation. It's understanding what it does good, and then fix the bad.
So I think though, it's part of the problem, right? So I was riding. I had Adam Bailey ride my bike a couple of weeks ago, and then he gets on it and he's like, "Dude, yeah, I fucking love this thing, but the rear shock just does not sit into the turn." He's like, "Go and ride this thing," and I rode Ferris's. One of Ferris's 250, it was a factory 250F, but it had the cone valves and then the track shock. And then you'd sit, and there was this feeling that I got was it almost it just leaned in so much that you'd literally have to catch the lean by holding the fucking thing wide open. And it was an uncomfortable feeling. But then as I rode it more, I was like, dude, I'm actually just turning fast now, because it's the bike really sits into the turn to the point where I fucking have to gas it. Whereas mine, it gets in and it gets sort of halfway in and almost rebounds out a little bit in the middle of the turn.
That's what I was going to say. It comes out, it swings up, the shock comes up, then you have to roll off the gas where that shock stays down.
Yep.
And you can get on the gas where you have an opposition. It's like a trampoline, right? Where you do the double bounce for somebody.
Yep.
You're getting that double bounce, and it's when a bike holds down, it can maintain that arc. But then at the same time, if you're riding hard pack tracks, you can turn it quicker, and change direction where his bike's going to want to push, right? It's going to want to taper away and go. So it's
understeer
finding the better. Yes, exactly. So like your bike would tend to oversteer because it has movement, where a race bike doesn't have as much movement, but it's not as compliant and as comfy, right? And I'll always tend to lean towards a firmer setting with and work on comfort within the chassis. And like I'd rather have a firm setting, so if I case something, it doesn't spit me over the bars.
And so, but I guess my point to that is that I just didn't really know. Like once I'd experienced it, and once I had somebody like Bailey tell me that that was happening, and then I could back to back it with something else, I was like, oh yeah, okay. Like I actually don't like. I want to go in between these two things now, but it's like you don't know what you don't know, and I think that and I think that
that's a
that's
very
what's
good
hard.
point.
That's what's hard for a guy like me. Like I would love to ride, like to know my bike a bit better, and I'd love to be able to sort of test this shit. But I almost don't. I didn't know I needed it until I could back to back it with something else. But it's like that's not really viable. So it's like, what's the roadmap? Like, do you have this thing where you should say your bike should kind of do this, and it's like, what are you chasing in, like chassis, suspension? Like, do you have this idea of good for you? And then where do you get that idea? And if you don't know all of this shit, like what should you be going out doing on a new bike and going, this is sort of what you want, and then work from that? Because I don't think a lot of people have that base knowledge.
That's a very, very question, and there's a simple answer to it. It's like having only Macker's cheeseburger, right? If
Yeah.
you only have that, that's going to be the only taste you have. So like your point, you're like, my bike felt pretty good till I tried that, right?
Mm.
So the average guy, they can't go and try 18 different shocks. And I reference from, remember in 2005 we did this? Let's try that, right? Because like that changed. So my biggest thing is always stay. You only know, like I was given an opportunity with an amazing company as KTM to ride a waves where they're giving me products to try. They were so aggressive that I was trying and trying and trying it, and my palate got so. I had the availability to try so many things that I could. Oh, that works. That doesn't work. I want this feeling, not this feeling. So now I know what my base should be like. Like I know that moves too much, or that's too soft, and I don't second guess. But for a guy like yourself, to answer your question like thoroughly, is like I recommend making smaller changes, like being kind of in tuned and taking notes. Like it sounds really silly, but if you really want to do it right, it's like taking notes. Like how's the track today? Is it soft? Is it hard? What's the bike doing? And and that's really how you have to do it. And make small changes. Like let's work on the fork and then change that. And then like 2 or 3 laps come in. And it takes a lot of energy to do it on your own. It really, truly does. So I really recommend staying in the parameter of standard. Like all the standard bikes have a good parameter nowadays, and staying within that parameter and trying to reference it. Referencing your bike is really key, right? So if you can take your bike, tinker with it, have your suspension guy do your suspension, or buy some chassis parts, and then have a friend of yours that has a bike that's close to the same, and try theirs, and that's relatively stock. And I'm going the wrong direction, go back. Because when I go test with KTM or any other manufacturer, I start with one setting at the beginning of the day, get warmed up, and then we start changing things. And then halfway through the day, we'll go back to stock or reference and go, we're going the right direction, or, we're going the wrong direction. And not every day is a win, right? So it's like, we're going the wrong direction. So then we start back over and go. And it's like I said, it's very monotonous, but I think all the models now are in a very good direction, and it's important to reference back to what works. So especially with clickers, right? You can keep a logbook of what you got, and I'm lost. Go back to your stock clickers. Go back to that. Hit reset, right? Just reset. Go back to stock. Boom. Even tires. Okay, let's go all back to stock. I'm not liking my bike. Go all back. Oh my gosh, it was my tires, or it was my triple clamp. Like a triple clamp could do it, right? But when you're having a good day riding and you got good energy and you got good, you're no injuries, your enthusiasm will override some idiosyncrasies with your bike usually. but when you're tired and you're hangry and you're not having a good day and you're struggling and your friends passing you that shouldn't pass you, you immediately lean towards the bike. You don't look at yourself. So it's important to like just don't freak out on the day and just always quality control your bike. Like, okay, check it, go back to the reference and start over.
Yeah, no, that is a good piece of advice, because it's real hard to even know what feels, the feeling that you want. Like, you're so experienced in testing motorcycles, you've tested for years and years and years, and you've had like a team around you to test, so you've got this idea of feeling. And the average guy, I just don't know that there's like really the information out there to be like, this is what you should test, this is where you should start. And yeah, you're right, like just those basic principles of like keeping notes. Like, I don't have a fucking notepad, I'm just sort of, you're just pissing in the wind.
Yeah, I would keep a little logbook, like a little diary, and like you make a change on this track, it works good. And that's the beauty of that air fork on the KTM, is you can go up, like, in a sand track, you can go up 0.2 bar or 0.4 bar. And I can't do that on my Yamaha in a minute and a half, right? I have springs. So there's positives and negatives to like different technology, right? But yeah, that's one thing. I was talking shit a little bit on Kiefer, Kiefer Inc. He does a phenomenal job with his testing about his bias and whatnot. But that's where he is very good, is he has a great, if anyone's looking for information, he does a very good job of communicating to people on kieferinc.com or something like that. I'm sure most of your listeners probably tune in because he has a wealth of knowledge that he rides 3-4 days a week still in his mid 40s, and he does a good job with it. I'm not in the position to do that all the time, but I quality control my bikes myself. Like, I get it set and I don't fuck with them. Like and then I know my Yamaha doesn't do X good, so I don't put it in that position. Yeah. Right? Like don't try to put the square peg in the round hole, right? Just don't. You can't make a Honda feel like a KTM. You can't make a KTM feel like a Honda. Like, you just can't. You gotta make it your own and work in the parameters what that technology is.
Yeah, dude, that makes a bunch of sense, and I think that there's a bunch of factory riders too that could probably take that advice.
Yeah, no, it's true, right? And I defend the factory riders almost every time because the teams want to accommodate them, right? So where Roger DeCoster does not accommodate them. Now, this is the package. You're running it. Right? Like, this is the package. We win on this package. Mitch Payton, very much the same. But when you're a younger team manager and you're not a team, unless he's very good, Tony, he's like, this is our package. It's proven. And it is proven, right? So, JGR is not proven. So there's a question mark, and the rider doesn't trust them.
Yeah.
So there's doubt, right? And like, going back to the CDR team, there's not doubt. I think the Australian way is you go to CDR.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So, when there's technology and there's technology and enthusiasm and whatnot, there comes doubt sometimes if it doesn't work.
Yeah, dude, for sure, huh? So I want to just go back to that air fork real quick. So for Pete, like, I haven't really been able to find a bunch on, like, let's say, tuning the air fork, because my shit is still stock. Actually, I got to run cone valves for the race that I did, which was pretty fucking sick. But I couldn't feel my hands, let alone my forks. So, wasted experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just back on the stock stuff now. When to tune the air fork, when should you put pressure in, and when should you touch clickers?
So the air is your spring.
Yeah.
Like, right? Your air is not your dampening.
Yeah.
So your spring will position is like, so if you're going down a hill and you're like, man, my bike's so deep in the front and the back's kicking, my first recommendation to you is to add some fork pressure, right? Add some air in the forks to get the front end up, right? So then you're like, okay, now my position's right, but now it's hard in my hands. That's when you'll go to your clickers and start working on your compression. And and then if you're coming into a turn and it's hitting a bump and popping in your face, or it's skating, then you'll start, depending on what you want to do, you'll mess with your rebound. But also with that is your rear can affect the front, right? But I think going to the air fork is mainly it's just your spring. Don't overthink it. It's not your dampening. It can act as dampening, like as comfort, but it's what holds you up in the air, right? So if you let the air out, the bike's got no pressure. It's like a stink bug, right? It's like it's tied down the back of the truck. Well, as soon as you put pressure on it, it starts lifting it up in the air. So if you were at a sand track per se, and you like were really deep sand, and you're okay, well, you should probably go up on your fork pressure because you want it to hold up and get that balance a little more high in the front, low in the back to keep it stable. If you're riding a harder pack track, which typically most of them are in Australia, you want to run more of a balanced setting. So you want your bike to be very balanced so you can turn it and turn out of the ruts and stay in them. So that's typically when you want to just work on your balance with your fork pressure. So if your balance is good, like you're not low, you're not pushing off the bars, if you're not, like feeling it's too tall, if it's not pushing in turns, then your fork pressure is right. Then you can start working with you're like, oh, it's too harsh when I land, and it's getting that mid stroke, and it's harsh in the mid stroke. That's your compression, and then you can start working with your clickers.
And so where would you start if would you want to do your air pressure in your forks first, and then that's going to get you the base and then go to compression? But so where do you put your compression clickers to do the initial your spring rate essentially?
So like your clickers, I would put them right where they come standard, like right in the middle. So if there's 36 clicks, go 18, right? If there's 24, go 12,
Quick
right?
maths.
So start in the middle. Yep, right in the middle, right? And then you can start tuning. And I go, the KTM clickers are actually very sensitive. You can feel one click actually.
Yeah,
you
right.
can. So what I would do, what I tend to do is like, if my balance is correct and I'm feeling like it's too soft or too firm, I'll make a big swing, like 3 to 4 clicks, to make sure I'm correct, right? Like, oh gosh, that was too much. And then I'll taper back 2, right? Like I won't go little. I'll just make a big swing, 3 or 4 clicks. Oh, that's good. And then kind of move into the shock. If you're riding sand and your bike's swinging back on you, you're not controlling it, you want to tighten in that high speed compression. Right. So that big nut, that 17 nut, you want to turn that thing in a half click or half a turn or a quarter a turn, and maybe even a full turn, depending on how soft it is. If you're jumping a jump and it's landing hard and you're accelerating and it's not working good, you want to go to the low speed. The KTM likes lots of it likes not a lot of rebound on the shock. So that track shock it drops out like a off-road truck, right? So like if you can get that rebound quick enough that when you come through those chuck holes that it drops down quicker, like it pushes back down, you'll get more traction that way. That's like the outside peg, like that feeling of letting it weight down. So it's all about getting that balance and understanding like what you do, and I wouldn't go high speed and rebound at one time. I'd go, so if you're riding Coolum, you'll want to tighten up that high speed typically in the afternoon, because those shocks, and most people go the wrong way. They go softer, right? Everyone's like, oh, it's getting rougher, I should go softer. And especially sand, you almost want to go the other way because you don't want the bike to move a bunch. You want to go a couple clicks stiffer so you're more controlled.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I don't know that there's that much out there that really can sort of help with that, Like, I mean, I've even had a look around on YouTube and shit for that info, but it is pretty hard to sort of get good.
Maybe
info.
I should do one. I should do one on the air fork myself and put it on my blog. I've actually yet to do that. My brother just left KTM after 15 years as the R&D mechanic, so maybe we should like join forces and make a little edit for some people. But it is like those are valid questions. You're not like way off the mark. It's just people will use air pressure as dampening and control, but air pressure is just your spring. It just holds you up, right? Like think of your shock spring, right? You'll never loosen or tighten your shock spring to make your dampening, right? No. Your shock spring is just your sag. That all your fork pressure. So I don't even check my sag half the time nowadays. If I'm racing, I'll check it, but I don't check it because if it feels good, then I'm good, right? Like if it's within a couple mil, I'm like, well, it's too tall in the back. Well, lower it, okay. I don't even need to check it. Oh, that feels good. But, if I'm pulling it out of the box, I'm going to check it so I have a reference. But, man, I don't even check it half the time anymore. I just run it off how I feel. Like, give me a one lap of turn on on the spring so I can get the back taller, or take one lap off so I can get it a little squattier.
Yeah. So switching gears completely now as to what bikes are killing it in 2021. What riders are you frothing on at the moment? Who is doing it the best right now?
Who is doing it the best?
Because it
Like
seems
as
to
far
me,
as just like racing winning.
dude, I'm just talking straight riding. Because I mean, there are some dudes right now like
This is Brad. You know who's my favorite? My favorite, Adam Cincerella.
Bruh, right?
You know why I like him? Because he's so he's got that Kenny Roxon flair, right? Like that when Kenny was like before he broke his arms, that scrub, that flair. But then he has this. Him and Nick Wade work so good on his technique. Like he has that flair that makes it look unattainable, but then also does things that's like very robotic that you need to be robotic. He has this amazing balance. He's my absolute favorite to watch right now. Cincerello, he's tall, but he tucks. He's got that dip, that elbow dip scrub. I think he is my absolute favorite. My worst guy to watch by far is Jeremy Martin. He's just bobblehead, like just meathead, hit every bump. And then Ferrandis is probably the close second. I love how that guy rides too. So you have two guys, you know, that are just like, I think Cincerella is one of my favorites. And Kenny's rad. Christian Craig at Paula was unbelievable. Christian Craig at Paula was insane. Like his intensity, he had this hunger that I've never seen Christian have. So I'd say Adam and Christian and Ferrandis are probably like the way that I can see. Like if I could pick a way for like training a guy to emulate, it'd be those guys. Those guys are just the package.
It's funny though, man, because they're the tall dudes. And traditionally, like if you go and let's look at tall guys as like Villeman and Preston, like we were never, let's go back 10 years ago, bro. You were never picking a tall guy to have the best style in the sport. And now all the tall dudes have the coolest style in the sport. Like technique has changed. And I think that one of the things that I've noticed in, I've just been full technique geeking. Like ever since I started jiu-jitsu and I realized what technique was and like how you should drill and practice technique, and like I could see my own muscle. Like I watch footage of me rolling jiu-jitsu now and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, dude, like you're doing like real weird cool shit that you can sort of like, there is like a technique, and it's more so, it's not even technique as much as it's just like proprioception. Like my leg, like say when I'm taking somebody's back in jiu-jitsu, like they're trying to defend by like closing this space so I can't like put my hook in to their leg. And all of a sudden, like your leg comes up and out, and then the heel just like chops in. And it's like, no matter what defenses they're doing, there's the technique that you work on and that you build, and the proprioception, the feeling that you have with your body, it's just like, and just comes in and fucking, no matter what they're doing, they're getting their back taken. And it just gave me this new appreciation for like the proprioception and the technique that these pro dudes have. And it just seems like the last couple of years, man, like the sport technically has just elevated so much. And there's like this new riding style. And like I was watching, when we did that trip to Cairns, we had a full-time film guy. So like all my laps were being filmed, which has never happened before in my life. And I was like literally breaking down footage. Like I'd put slow-mos of me on the screen and then slow-mo of, and I sound like a fucking wanker now, I get it. Slow-mos of me.
You don't. Trust me. It's like, I geek out on it hard.
But like there was me, slow-mo of me, and then a slow-mo of Chase Sexton. And I'm like, I look good, but I don't look like that. And I'm just trying to pick up the details. And one of the things that I really noticed, that it was like light bulb moment, and me and Todd had like a 45-minute conversation about it, is that when you watch guys like Chase Sexton and you watch these like, and Cincerello, their knee line never passes, not even their toe line. Their knee line never passes like the arch in their foot, where like their heel, where like their foot and their tib fib even meet. And so like Sexton, when he's riding and he sits from a turn, the first movement that Sexton makes is he basically throws his calf muscles as far back as he can and his knees as far back as he can, so that it's just like straight up and even a little bit back. And it's like, these little details that these guys are making. And I think that it's this kind of shit that's actually letting the tall riders actually look good, and they're sort of dominating now, like these taller dudes, you know. It's like they've figured out a technique to like make the levers really work for them in a way that wasn't done in the past. And I think that knees behind the toes thing is massive.
I agree with you, but it's what's funny is I said Adam, I said Ferrandis, right? I said Craig, but we didn't mention any of the title holders, right? Like Osborne has the worst form. Osborne has the worst looking style. I'm like the biggest Zach Osborne personal fan as a person.
Dude, he's a lord. So, he's a lord.
But
I don't want to ride like him.
I don't want to ride. But he gets it done, and in Tomac he hammers through stuff and beats his way through it. But
Jay Marmont was the same.
Yeah, it's like I'm very like I call myself SpongeBob SquarePants, right? Like I'm very old school, like elbows up, broad shoulders, like robotic. Like I don't scrub really. Like I can whip it, like on the right jump. I can still crank some whips, but it's very. I don't turn down. Like I'm very robotic, like two stroke, because I always have my finger on the clutch, right? In case it's going to bog, just from all those years. It's not going to bog. It's going to quit, right? It's not going to bog.
And then the clutch ain't helping you, son.
Yeah. So I think, like you said, like this new school way of riding, like even like the old school way, like, okay, put your elbows up, head over, leg up by the shroud. The new guys don't even take their leg off in ruts anymore, right?
No.
They lift it. They just lift it up, you know, like they lift it. And a lot of it's evolution of power, EFI. Like I look at Adam and the way, you know, when he made that growth spurt, like you said, lever, and that was like a big like aha moment. When Adam went from Super Mini to 250F, he was really tall in a Super Mini, right? So he would swing off the back of it thinking like that old school way of I'm going to go faster from hanging off the back, right? So, and Dean Wilson's the same way. These guys that had bigger growth spurts when they were older, they had to reinvent how they rode because they'd swing off the back when they're like Dean would do it on his lights bike, right? Swing off the back of it, hang out. Well, what happens is when you get bigger and you have more weight inertia, that lever, you're swinging off the back, right? And like when Dean gets in trouble because he has, he shuts the brain off and he gets way back on the bike. Where like Chad Reed kind of changed the game with being neutral, right? Or I'd say MC. MC was neutral, then Chad elevated that neutral positioning to like being in the whoops and just neutral, head over. We were always taught when we were young, get your ass back and lean back, right?
Same,
like,
dude. Yeah.
Like, right? And then Chad comes in head, chin over the bars, butt back as a triangle, like you said, very much like jiu-jitsu, being you can move forward and you can move back, but if you're off the back, you have two ways to go, off the back or way over the front.
Yeah.
Where if you're neutral, you can adjust, you know, a couple inches either way. But yeah, it's just been insane. Like Adam had to relearn to ride because he's 6'2" now, and he's got a lot of moving mass. Dean Wilson, he's 6'2", 185 pounds, and big guy. When he swings off the back of that 60-plus horsepower bike, there's a big issue there, right?
Yeah.
Where you have Kenny.
Well, you got
Christian
a lot of room
Craig
you got a lot of room to cover in a very like split second time, and it's
absolutely.
like you can't recover that. Like there's too much ground in too short of a time.
Yeah. Like Todd Waters is very neutral, like almost so neutral it looks like awkward, right?
Yeah.
Like he's very neutral, kind of elbows down, but he doesn't swing off the back, right? So it's like the more neutral you are, the better you can control the bike, right? Like that you can lean angle, and I think Aussies are, because the tracks are harder packed majority, they're one of the best at controlling like lean angle and turns, right? They sit on the side of the seat. They work the bike a lot more than like a typical American that just uses a rut or sand, right?
Yeah. It's been real interesting to watch and really try and dissect it, and you know, to see these nuances now that are like making themselves more obvious from a technical sort of standpoint. And it's been sick to like almost watch an evolution now.
Yeah, and I think the thing I use this when I coach kids. I love coaching. I love being a student, even myself. Like I love to be taught, right? When I ride, and I'll ask people, how do I look? You know, I ask my brother, people that go to the how do I look? And it's not like looking. It's like what can I be better at? You know, what am I
Yeah.
doing wrong? And people that know you well know I have a tendency to have a lazy leg. Like I don't lift it all the way up when I need to, and then I don't lean the bike over. But in the state of 4-strokes, especially nowadays, even in 250F, is picking up loose change, right? Like if me and you were a drag race down the parking lot, you'd put $1,000 and you might be able to beat me because it's just a straight drag race, right?
Yeah.
There's no turns, there's no bumps. You'd be like, yeah, I'll put 1,000 on it. It's just a drag race. But if you were to put like 12 bumps and 2 S turns, you're like, no, I'm out, right?
Yeah, Sleeter's got me for sure.
But what I'm getting at is guys try to rush the hard parts of the track and not the easy parts. So like Osborne and like say Cincerello, Osborne has been very good this year being efficient and smooth in the hard parts, but gets everything out of the easy part. Where Cincerello tries to get everything out of every section, and that tends to bite him, right? Cooper Webb's the magician, right? He looks good, he's efficient, but he will take his time when he needs to, and he'll wick it up when he has to or when he can. So he has a good sense of what the track can hold for speed. Zach was very good this year. Eli is still not the best at it, right? Dunge was the magician at it. Like he could ride the track to its absolute potential everywhere. So you look at Adam. Adam's going, say, 50, let's say he goes 80 kilometers an hour on a straightaway. He tries to go 82 kilometers in a turn. It's like, dude, that thing can only hold 78K, right? Like, where Zach knows it's 78K. Like this in 2020, he knows I can only hold that speed, right? So it's like that's where it comes into play of like getting the most out of each sector of the track within. Those guys are also fast. It's usually when they have a bad lap, it's to road the turn, and they had to check up and grab the clutch, right? It's not because they didn't try hard or they don't have the skill. It's they overrode probably the easy part. That's my take.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. You know what that's kind of in line with? I went riding with Todd. It was sometime last year. We got this like psycho sand track, and I just sucked. Like it was dry. I felt shit. I just literally just struggled my way around for like my warm up, and I was just like, this fucking sucks today. Like I'm over it. And I just said to Todd, I was like, you know what? Like on a day like this, obviously the swing of his dog shit day compared to my dog shit day is going to be like quite a bit different, But I was like, on a day like this, what do you do when the track, like when you're just not riding good? And he's like, fuck man, just go fast on the straights. I was like, you know what? That's actually like insanely good advice. He's like, fuck the turns, just like cruise around the turns and then just go fast on the straights.
Yeah, like that's my advice to any vet guy is like I call it pick up the loose change. Are you walking down the street and you see $1 on the street, are you gonna walk by it? No, I'm gonna pick it up. So like, don't go take a fishing hook and try to get the dollar in the drain down the curb, like way down there, because you're probably not gonna get it without the right tools in your tool bag. But if on that sidewalk, if it's just the wind's blowing it and you can just grab it, you're gonna pick it up. So it's like on the straightaway, take your time in the turn, take a breath. Look up, keep your knees tight, drop your heels, balls of your feet, squeeze tight, head over the bars, and go fast in a straight line, right? Like, that's easy. Turn right. If you're not going to jump that double, go fast over the double. Don't just go slow over it. Go, absorb the next one, then go fast again. Like, don't complicate the hard parts. Make the hard parts almost a rest section, essentially, right? Take your time for them, and then pick up the loose change everywhere else.
Yeah, man, it was such simple advice from Todd, and it's pretty much in line with exactly what you're saying. And it's like, if you can't ride the fucking turns, just go real fast down the straight, and eventually, and I think that the problem is that it's like Rocky was like this with the race that we did. I just couldn't get momentum anywhere, dude. Like it was so rough. I was fucking up every turn because I was like trying, like you'd gather that speed and then you'd go into the turn and then you'd blow the turn and then you're like fucking feeder off and now you exit speed, you practically have none. So then you're trying to make up for it down the straight and then you do the same thing. But it's like you almost need to do the exact opposite. Like just go fast on the straights, slow through the turn, and then give yourself an exit and then have a crack at the next section with, like you said, just hit the fucking top speed.
Yeah, I don't know. my son would race me down a straightaway, right? Like,
Yeah.
but then it's like, so race down the straightaways. Don't overthink. We'll work on the hard parts later, but don't. You are probably trying to rip the rutted turn and the wheel tap that bump, and then you're recovering down the straightaway, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So and that was like me in my early years of Supercross. I was so worried about the whoops. I'd do dog shit the whole other track, and then I'd get to the whoops, and here we go, and try to send it. Then I'd hold my breath for 20 seconds, and then I'd be, and it's like I should have just ripped the whole track and then found the best, most efficient way through the whoops, right? So like that's Waters is exactly right. Just point and shoot if don't rush a section, like, and also have a plan for riders. Like if you have a plan of attack, like, I mean, jiu-jitsu is the same way. You're a student of the sport. It's like, well, if I go, having a plan and like before you take off, the pros get a parade lap. Like club days, you don't get a parade lap usually, right? So do what you can to look at the track and have a plan. Like first turn, I'm going the outside. Second turn, I'm going to go the outside again. Third turn, I'm going to go inside, and I'm going to jump that double and do this. And if you have a plan in your head to do the track at one speed, and then and you're 100% committed, you're better off going the wrong line 100% committed the first lap than 80% committed the right line, right? Because you're getting the turns now, and correct me if I'm wrong, you go into turns, you're like inside, outside, inside, outside, oh shit, I'll go outside. And then you typically might even tip over because you didn't anticipate what was there. Yeah. But if you would have gone, I'm going outside in that turn, you're going to go outside and rip it, right? So have a plan. That's why everyone rips their local track so well, because they know it by like the back of their hand. Yeah, I'm going outside here, I'm going to double that bump, I'm going to jump that triple, but when you're at a racetrack that you're not familiar with, or it's developing different, you don't have a plan for it. So I always tell kids, like, ride or kids or other athletes, like, sit down on the line before you start your bike, run a lap in your head. If the lap time is 1:30 for you on the track, and you do a lap in your head and it takes you 1:10, you rush that lap, you're probably going to crash. So you should be able to ride that lap in your head at roughly your same lap time, right? Like come out of that turn in second, grab third, going to shift to fourth, going to come through that section, downshift to second, going to come back up. It should take you the same amount of time and be prepared than the other stuff.
Yeah, no, that's really solid advice. I think the other thing I've noticed that I don't do is, like, I just don't really change much shit in terms of riding. Like, I rode at my buddy's house, Azza, and I was hitting this rut in second gear all day. Like, literally the 2 days I rode there, I hit it in second gear, and then Wade Hunter rode my bike, and then I was like, oh, that sounds different. He's like, oh, I'm hitting it in third. And then I hit it in third for like the last 20 minutes of the day, and it was like insanely better. And I'm like, fuck, like, I feel like everybody should just do some different shit. Like, when you're on your warm-up, like, hit it in third one lap, hit it in second the next lap, hit this different line in there. Like, I'd never really deviate away from what I think I should do, but I just sort of need to understand that I don't know shit.
Well, here's why, and I defend you and pretty much 98% of all motorcycle riders that want to be better. We go to a club day or an open practice day, right? We get off work and we get there at 4:00. Okay, they open the track and everyone starts getting out there. Well, it's like getting on the freeway on the 91 at 5:00. Everyone's hauling ass. You're like, oh shit, I gotta go. So how do you get to practice, right? So if you talk about jiu-jitsu or footy or anything like that, you practice things. You practice, plays. You practice, a maneuver. You don't just scrimmage every time, right? Yeah. Like, think about it. Like, if you have a match, like, I don't know, jiu-jitsu, you call them matches, right? Like, you don't have a match every day. You practice movements. You practice form. You practice drills. You stretch. You do things to be better. Where moto, we just go do motos. We go moto, moto, moto. That's not the best way to be better. So, like, that's why the GPFs and the MTFs and all these places are really good for younger riders, because they actually practice so much skill, right? Yeah. It's a high intensity skill section, but how do you practice skill on an open practice day? It's really tough and dangerous cutting the track. Some tracks don't let you cut the track to work on a section. So the best is to find an open paddock, make a figure eight, and work on the stupidest simple things, Yeah. Work on drills. Like basketball players, they practice free throws, they practice passing, they practice, dribbling where we just go, let's go faster, but we don't actually practice things that make us faster.
Yeah, and that honestly, like this, like I sort of said earlier, that whole deal has come from jiu-jitsu. Like I've done the thing that when I, like last year or the last 2 years in comps, I won every single match. It was like 30 something matches in a row with the same fucking submission.
That's rad.
And it's like there was 2 that I've won with something different, but they were both the same thing. So I've literally got like an A submission that I won 30 plus fights with or matches, and then 2 matches what I won with my B submission. I've done those fucking things so many times, dude. Like I know I got long ass legs. I'm good at triangles. I know 100 different ways to die in the West with a triangle. You know what I mean? Yep. And it's like, so then I've practiced it and practiced it and practiced it and practiced it because I'm like, okay, game time, I know I need to be good at this. Like this is my highest percentage thing. And it wasn't until I really figured that out where I was like, I'd have never in my life done this in moto. Like essentially it'd be just like going to a jiu-jitsu gym for the first time and just rolling and rolling and rolling. And it's like, you could get good. Like, I'm not saying that you can't get good. And there's guys that do get good by just going to the gym and rolling. But like my coaches, they do fucking drills. Like they do drills that take like 3 minutes. They're doing like this and then they tell their partner, I want you to escape like this and escape like this. And they just keep chasing and chasing. And it's in a drill format. And it's like the commitment that they have to these drills is just like razor blade sharpening their technique so that it's like I said, it's that proprioception, you know? It's like when a bike kicks left, you've done it so many times that, you know, you've drilled that section or you've drilled exiting a rut that you know you've had the thing kick out on you so many times. You've had the front pop out on you so many times. Like you've had it slightly tuck. It's like you've got this natural reaction. You're not in this like kind of survival mode of a moto every single time. And, you know, from jiu-jitsu, it really made me like look at it differently. And like the last time I was at QMP, I hit the same rut. I was like, what's the shittest rut I do on this track? And it was this sort of double apex thing. It's like a sick turn and a bunch of people hit it good, but I never hit it good. So I did it 40 times. I hit it 40 times in a row. Luckily it was Thursday morning. There's no one really there and I could cut the track. But it's to what you said. And it's like, I think there's this mentality too that you have. It's exactly what you just said, where you think that, you know, you're on the 405 and it's like you get on the exit, you pull on the freeway and then it's like you're on it in all the traffic until you pull off. And then that's pretty much what it's like when we're sort of just going out doing motos. But man, just the improvement. I hit that one right 40 times, went in, got a drink, come out. I was riding the rest of the track better, insane amounts better.
So let me throw this at you. So like I'm a huge cycling and mountain bike guy, right? So like moto guys, like Thursday at Glen Helen before the Nationals, there's like half the fields out there just smashing motos, right? At high heart rate, burning calories, beating their bodies up. Then they got to come home. They got to rehydrate. They got to recover. They got to pack their food. They pack their gear, eat dinner, get on a flight at sunrise. I mean, you've done this rat race, right? Yeah. Get on a flight at 4 a.m., fly across the country with bad air, lose 2-3 hours of time, maybe 4, have swollen ankles, and then go race the next day. If you told a cyclist or a mountain bike racer, hey, you're going to go do a full-blown hour XC race at the highest heart rate, high heart rate, and then race again in 2 days, they're like, no way, we can't do that. We're going to be smoked, right? Like, we can't do that. This is where our sport is bad. Like, we demand so much out of our bodies in moto because it's so talent-based and then the fitness is right there that we need to taper. Riders aren't tapering their bodies. So what Gareth Swanepoel has done, and I hope he doesn't get pissed me telling everyone, but what he does is called tempo training, right? So like for cyclists, you'll go out and ride at your heart rate 130 to 140. Like you're burning calories, you're getting good blood flow, you're working hard, but then you're getting good muscle memory, but you're not overexerting yourself, right? So how do you do that with moto? it's really tough, right? Because like your heart rate spikes right away, and you don't want your competition to pass you because they get confidence and you might lose confidence. What Swanepoel does for the star guys, he has a day a week. They don't get to ride without they have to ride without a clutch and a back brake. So that way they can only push so hard, right? So if you have all the tools in your tool bag, your clutch, your brake, your bike's normal, you can push your body and your bike to the absolute limit, correct? So if you take away the clutch, well, you only can go into a turn so far. Well, we both know that if you don't use your clutch and you go through a turn good, you're a legend. Like you can just rip the turn, carry your roll speed. If you don't have a back brake, you're also going to get more roll speed. So Swanepoel's done a really cool thing where their heart rate doesn't spike because they can't push themselves because the bike doesn't allow them to push that hard. But what's happened is I got served up some by Colt Nichols and McElrath. They went by me like mid-season at Paula, and I was out there riding around, and I still ride okay, and they went by me like I was standing still. And as Shane's like goes scrubbing by me on this jump, I look at his clutch lever and it's sticking straight up in the air. Mall. That fucker just passed me like I'm standing still with no clutch or back brake. I have full control of my bike. And that's what a lot of those things, and their heart rate's not spiking. So he's figured out a way to not only better their craft by riding, by not skidding with the back brake, not overriding the clutch, but he's also making sure their body doesn't overexert in that day riding. So it's like you can do drills. It's a drill. It's not just motos. There's a drill and there's a plan. So I think our sport's very technically advanced with motorcycles. We do, VO2 max. We have training programs, but the very nuts and bolts of what we do, most trainers aren't even training the riders the right way. They're going faster, faster. Well, how do you get faster? Can you tell me? Alvin Baker's not going to tell you how to go faster on the bike. He's going to build your body. You need to figure that out on yourself, like on your own, or have a riding coach. We're like Villeman's a riding coach for Ferrandis, and there's other guys that are riding coaches. Michael Burns, like a riding coach with team manager, right? Nick Way, there you go. He knows that they all know enough about training, but they're mainly a riding coach. And look what Nick Way's done with reinventing Adam's riding. The weight, proportion, all his technique. He sucks the most out of Adam. So my advice to everyone is really practice craft the best you can. Take your pride, check it at the door. Do laps with no clutch. Do laps with no back brake. Really work on things that actually can make you better than just doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, man. And that's been, it sucks that I had that fucking crash. I literally crashed the 350 running it in, dude. You know what you said before?
Oh, that sucks.
You know what you said about the chromoly chassis, like not as forgiving if you like land sideways? Yeah, I found that out.
Yep.
I literally I got kicked. I basically was like just going to case like this sort of long and low sand roller type thing. And I was like, oh, this would be fine. 99 or 97 hour Honda. This would soak this bitch up. And then I just landed like the littlest bit sideways, and then it fucking bucked, dude. And then there was a fence like literally right to the side of the track, and it pointed me at the fence. So then I had to grab a handful to like miss the fence and then hit the next fucking like just out of control cartwheel. But this has been my whole 2020 of riding, has been like really just trying to dial in actually riding a dirt bike good, because it's like I'm at the point now where I want to get a bunch more years out of this shit, and it's kind of hard to get a bunch of years out of riding a bike if you're fucking crashing every 3 rides and fucking yourself up, And it's like and I just don't think I've invested in my base as much as I should. And you look at these guys like Chase Sexton, dude, like the way that guy rides a dirt bike is fucking insane, man. And it's just technical.
And I didn't say him, and I'm embarrassed to say I didn't say Chase is one of my favorites, and he's not one of my favorites. Here's the reason why: because he makes it look so damn easy.
Oh yeah, he's taking it to the extreme.
It's so unattainable to me to ride that smooth at that speed. Like, is he doing anything wrong? Hell no, he's doing everything right. But to me, I just like, I can't even fathom it, to be honest. That's why like Adam has this, like, he makes mistakes and he looks squirrely. So sorry to cut you off, but I just want to make sure people knew, like Chase is insane, like next level. I'm a big fan, advocate, everything Chase Sexton.
Yeah, but you are right though. Like he rarely steps outside of the box. And what's crazy, like me and Townley have had this conversation a bunch of times, is like I feel like your technique that you have, and you're correct, because all technique is on a dirt bike is, it's like the body is this one massive weight and then the bike is this other massive weight. And if one's going this way and one's going that way, it's going to cause a problem. So like you've got to find this unison, and it's like this real-time gyro stabilizer that basically you're trying to compensate with your body at the right time for the right place for the bike. And there is the point where that is like physically optimal, and then that's like your base of how fast you can go, essentially, because you're going to feel like the bike is going to sort of stay underneath you. And then, but you look at all these guys, and I think that point is lost, because like you look at a dude like Jeremy Martin, like you answered, like when you spoke about him, he's just gone, da 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 da, fuck you, and it's like he's pulling it off. But there is a base of technique there where he is putting his body in the right position at the right time, but then he's doing plus 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 plus, and it gives you that look. So you think he's just that fast without technique. There is technique there, but then he's pushing it that extra bit further. I think with Sexton though, what he highlights is that what he's doing is pure technique. He's not stepping outside of that box, but his technique is so good, he doesn't have to.
I completely agree. I think, like you said, Jeremy Martin, you can't ride a 450 that way. Like, if he doesn't change like the narrative, he'll never
Daytona
succeed
Supercross.
like that. Yeah, I guess that proves me wrong, I guess, a little bit. But
no,
it's
he
like,
fucking cartwheeled in practice like 2 laps in.
Yeah.
Were you there for that?
No, but didn't he get the podium?
Yeah,
didn't he get second there on?
Yeah, he did well, but dude, like
it's just an unattainable. Like, you can't do it forever like that,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
You have to change. And another thing is the way how fit that guy's numbers, his physical VO2 max and his numbers that his body allows him to produce are off the charts. Like, he could do the Tour de France, how fit he is.
Yeah.
So the way he rides actually correlates with his body also, right? Like
100%.
Like I think Ferrandis has like a very unique, as in not indifferent, but like a different but not in wrong, is he can ride that very French light feel, but also just when it's time to just get outside the box and get uncomfortable, he's willing to get uncomfortable, right? Christian Craig, he's so smooth. I think he's gotten tired of like so smooth, so pretty. And that's why I said Christian, like at Paula, he actually was jumping to flat. You don't see Christian doing that often, right? It's like his technique would always, the guy that really kind of comes to mind, in our era, there's a guy earlier than that, Ron Lachine, the dogger. That's why he was so smooth. He looked slow. But Josh Hansen, right? Josh Hansen was the same as Christian, right? As soon as they made a mistake or got outside the box, they would shut it down. So to see Christian this summer be hounding Tomac and getting outside that box a little bit each week and getting uncomfortable. What do they say? Getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think that's very. Well, clearly Jeremy is very comfortable being uncomfortable.
That's his spot.
If he's comfy, he's not going fast. Where like Christian, if he's really uncomfortable, like he's probably gonna get hurt because he's gonna turn off. So different, and that's what the sport is so cool, is there's so many different ways to skin the cat, I guess you could say, right? Like, I think that's why we're all such fans of it, because no one really has it. There's not a playbook that you could say this is how you have to do it, right? You can be a J-Law in the right time, the right season, and win. You can be you can be a Zach Osborne and sit too far back on the seat and win a national championship that he was never supposed to win, and 2 lights titles, right? Like, there's so many different ways to skin the cat that it keeps us all talking about it. So I think that's why we all love the sport so much.
Well, Mike Sleeter, I love you as a Gypsy Tales guest, my friend.
Thanks, my man. Well, I'm looking forward to having some bench racing sessions come 2021 in-house.